Chapter 56. The more Thea and Catwoman talked, the happier they got. They compared their life paths and found that they were surprisingly compatible. Thea suggested that she increase the intensity of her and Batman's love life. After all, they had known each other for so many years. She knew what he looked like, and he knew her depth. What was there to be afraid of? Just chase after him. It was too easy for a girl to chase after a guy. Speaking of which, it was quite strange. Gotham was a place where money was good but not people. Perhaps it was a feng shui problem, but every couple that was about to succeed would break up in the end. For example, Batman and Catwoman, Gordon and Barbara's mother, the Riddler and that girl. Every single one of them was a failure. Oh, no, other than the domineering Joker, the rest were all broken up. Perhaps the feng shui of this place couldn't withstand the Joker's madness. Oh right, have you guys dated before? Theo was doubtful that the serious Master Bruce knew that men and women needed to go on dates to be together. Just once. Catwoman was a little embarrassed as she spoke. She lowered her head and looked at her. It was that time when we went to Star City. Alright, so this date of yours is just going to cause a ruckus at my place. So this was Gotham's way of expressing romance. It was quite unique. Don't you guys give each other gifts? Yes, my gloves and long whip were all given by him. Catwoman's blissful expression made Thea shiver. Oh my, I was wrong to say that Batman was slow. You're not that strong. Just as Sia was about to give her a good lesson on the 108 things to pay attention to in a relationship between a man and a woman. Hurry up, everyone hurry up. A young man dressed as a restaurant worker led a few burly men with pistols to the back of the kitchen. Theo looked at Catwoman. What was going on? No matter how he looked at it, these men didn't look like they were going to wash the dishes in the back because they couldn't afford to pay. Could it be that they were going to use their guns to reason with the restaurant owner? Catwoman ignored Thea's surprised look. She took a bite of the fish and said slowly, "They are probably collecting protection fees. It's nothing to be surprised about. Just get used to it. When in Rome, do as the Romans do." Listening to the gunshots inside, he looked around and saw that the diners all looked calm. They were eating and drinking as usual. Perhaps this was the custom here. With this interruption, it was difficult to continue talking about their love life. The two began to talk about Thea's skateboard. Catwoman was very considerate. She only asked about the design concept and didn't ask about the technical details. The two of them only discussed the practical aspects. To be honest, this skateboard didn't have too many technical barriers. Thea hadn't seen the data of the Green Goblin skateboard. She had just pieced together a similar skateboard based on her imagination. No one was more stupid than the other. If she could copy it, others could too. This thing couldn't be intellectual property rights. Not to mention others, with Batman's high IQ, it was easy to say that Thea and Felicity's work was as easy as flipping his hand. However, he could still make a similar skateboard after a few months of seclusion. Therefore, Thea's attitude towards Catwoman's questions was that she would tell her if she asked. If she didn't get the answer, then forget it. Just as she was drawing a sketch and talking about a few design points, a few burly men rushed into the kitchen with AKs. Thea looked at Catwoman again. Did this restaurant require an interview to wash dishes? Were these people from the previous batch of people from the same hometown? The previous batch of people felt that it was easy to earn money here, so they asked their friends to come quickly. The feline girl was also a little surprised. She unconsciously stretched her head to take a look inside. Come on, you're a feline girl, not a giraffe girl. What can you see from dozens of meters away in a wall? Realizing that she didn't see anything, Catwoman didn't look embarrassed. She elegantly lit a woman's cigarette and spread her hands at Thea, indicating that they were just like this. They had embarrassed themselves in front of the people of Star City. Thea also expressed her admiration for the vibrant lifestyle of the people of Gotham. They couldn't continue the topic of weapons. They could only switch to the topic that Thea was currently most concerned about, how to fight in a high-heeled battle. Catwoman almost laughed out loud when she heard this question. This was exactly what she was proud of. In her previous love life, she was always at the stage of the audience when it came to skateboard equipment. She was the one who received the knowledge and guidance. Now, she could finally hold her head high. Thea, even a little girl like you doesn't know how to do it. Let me teach you a lesson. It's time for me to attack. She then explained her experience in detail. It was similar to what Shiva said, but it was more about how she felt in actual combat. Catwoman didn't know if she was traumatized when she was young, or if she was a Gotham citizen. She was more or less mentally ill. She seemed to have a sensory disorder. Her self-awareness was completely focused on height. She was full of confidence when she wore high-heeled shoes, but when she changed into flat shoes, her aura plummeted. She was 1.7 tall, but she still wore high-heeled shoes every day. From afar, she looked 1.8 tall. This height made many suitors flinch. Her appearance could be said to be the prettiest girl Thea had ever met. Her figure was even more so. When she was young, she fed the stray cats every day and stole milk from them. Her figure made Thea, who was of the same gender, feel moved just by looking at her. While she was listening attentively to Catwoman's experience in actual combat, footsteps were heard. 3 gang members carrying machine guns and 1 carrying a rocket launcher passed by Thea's table aggressively. This time, without Thea asking with her eyes, Catwoman could tell that something was wrong. In just a short while, 3 groups of people had charged in. The last few were carrying rocket launchers. Judging from their posture, this wasn't an ordinary gang dispute. The 2 girls had a feeling that today's meal would not be paid for. Women always had a sixth sense. With a loud bang, the entire restaurant quieted down. However, the silence didn't last for more than a few seconds. Screams came from the kitchen. "Ah, ah, run, run!" The few people who went in earlier ran out with their faces covered in blood. A few of them ran while throwing their weapons. Among them, a bald man stood out. He didn't leave through the door. Instead, he covered his head with his clothes and found a weak spot in the wall. With a loud bang, he broke through the wall and rushed out. Thea was stunned. The successor of the Iron Head art. What a tough guy. But what's going on? The 2 girls looked at each other. Looking at the few people running away as if they wished they had more legs, Catwoman knew that something was wrong. Thea could understand Chinese, but the few people's accents were Americanized. They were neither Chinese nor foreign, so all she could hear was the word run. I hate situations like this. Thea didn't bring any equipment with her. She thought that nothing would happen in the police's area, but it was too late for regrets now. Catwoman was also dressed casually. She only had a dagger with her. However, looking at the chaos around her, she didn't have any intention of performing the 72 steps of Tan Tue. Since we can't start the fight, let's just run. Catwoman pulled Thea and ran out. Chapter 57. The 2 ladies were both agility-type heroes. Their long legs made them look like they were flying. They did not need to run faster than the Flash, as long as they could run faster than the customers in the restaurant. The 2 ladies gave the crowd a live performance of Run, Sisters. After running out of the restaurant, they found an open space and joined the crowd of onlookers. Since they did not know what was going on, as the host, Catwoman could not shirk her responsibility. She was also curious. Under Thea's gaze, she found a gangster who had entered the restaurant earlier and dragged him to the corner of the wall. After a round of punches and kicks, she returned to Thea's side. It's Killer Croc. I think he jumped out from the sewers. He killed 2 people at the scene. I didn't expect him to be released. Xia didn't ask who it was. In any case, she knew that Batman's team had dealt with him before. That was easy. This meant that there was a strategy. Many villains were very powerful in the early stages, but later on, they were reduced to soy sauce and replaced by new villains. The key point here was that the heroes had a strategy. The same trick wouldn't work on Saint Seiya the second time. There was a similar setting here. Many villains had mutated abilities. The first time, they didn't understand the situation and fought fiercely, but the second time, they could easily take the opponent's head. Abilities were temporary, but technology was a lifetime. Thea was more certain of her technology enhancement path. That was it. In fact, she had no choice but to do so. She was forced to do so by the situation. If she had Kryptonian blood, she would have found a beach to sunbathe. Why would she practice martial arts? She did not have a choice. Just as she was about to ask Catwoman to explain the strategy, the load-bearing wall of the Chinese restaurant not far away suddenly shattered. The entire building slowly collapsed and finally turned into a pile of rubble under everyone's gaze. What a pity. The fish in this restaurant is really good. Hearing Catwoman's murmur, Thea could only express her admiration for Gotham's strong mental fortitude. Let's go. Catwoman pulled Thea and walked out. Were they leaving just like that? What happened to the Friends of Justice, the defenders of the city? It's not good for us to just leave like this. After all, we ate a lot of food and didn't pay. We should help if we can. Can't you see that the restaurant owner has already fainted from crying in the toilet? Catwoman seemed to know her doubts and patiently explained, according to Killer Crocodile's past habits, he won't go on land when there are many people. He often moves in places with water such as sewers. Let's go back to change clothes and get equipment. He won't go too far. There is a small artificial lake not far from here. He will most likely go there. Thea scratched her head when she heard that they were going to fight underwater. Her equipment would be completely useless if she went underwater. She had never tested it underwater, and she had never heard of the hero who could shoot arrows underwater. Besides, she was also very resistant to getting wet. If they all wanted to go underwater, she could only support them mentally. Just as the two of them were rushing back, Thea's phone rang. Felicity's voice came from the phone. Thea, are you guys still at the scene? Listen to me, Killer Crocodile is in a man-made lake not far from you. Their naming skills are terrible. She muttered in a low voice. Robin is rushing over. Barbara is a little worried. You guys go and help him. Thea valued the taciturn Robin. After all, he was Batman's first disciple. If Batman didn't have a daughter, he would definitely be his son-in-law. Although Felicity didn't say that the situation was serious, it was still dangerous. There's no time to get equipment. Let's just go there. Sia hung up the phone and turned to ask for Feline Girl's opinion. Feline Girl was even more concerned about her teammates. Not to mention Robin, she would not even leave Barbara, who she did not get along with, in the lurch. She immediately led the way, and the two ran towards the artificial lake. The more they walked, the more remote the area became. There were more trees around, and the traces of pedestrians gradually decreased. After walking through a sandy area, Sia finally saw the so-called artificial lake. It seemed to be a large amusement park, but it had been completely abandoned due to lack of maintenance. The dilapidated wooden horses and the broken Ferris wheel added a touch of gloominess to this place that used to bring laughter in the past. The artificial lake was located in the north of the amusement park. When the two of them got closer, they saw that Robin was already fighting the killer crocodile with a short stick. This guy is really ugly. That was Thea's first impression. She could only tell from its appearance that it was a humanoid monster that walked upright. Its upper body was naked, and its body was covered in dense dark gray scales. Its head was huge, and its mouth was filled with sharp teeth. The guy was at least 2 meters tall. Judging by its thick arms and legs, it weighed more than 250 pounds. Thea shook her head. How much did it eat in a day? How did this guy become like this? Was it a malignant experiment or a biochemical modification? Thea saw that Robin was fighting with the big guy without showing any signs of losing. She wasn't too worried. She turned her head to ask Catwoman. She wanted to know more about it, but in fact, it was just to satisfy her curiosity. This guy that we'll call human for the time being looked too weird. Look at his sharp teeth and big claws. With such a look, Gotham was able to let him live happily until today without dissecting or slicing him up. Your torch of love relay was pretty good. Catwoman pondered for a moment. Bruce collected his cells. From the current clues, he hasn't undergone any experiments or modifications. He's just a normal human with a little bit of atavism. Looking at the killer crocodile that was punching and kicking Robin in the distance, and still nimbly biting Robin with its big mouth, this was, a little bit. This guy looks so bad that even his own mother wouldn't be able to recognize him, and you're telling me that this is a normal human? Are you kidding me? If this guy is a normal human, I'm Superman's 7th grandaunt. The cat girl glanced at Sia from the corner of her eyes and saw that she was frowning and raising her eyebrows. She knew that Sia didn't believe her, so she decided not to take the blame. This conclusion was made by Bruce. If you have any questions, you can ask him when he comes back. After that, the two of them focused on the fight between Robin and the killer crocodile. It didn't take long for Thea to understand that the killer crocodile had not undergone any training. He didn't know any punches or kicks. He only knew how to punch and kick. From this point of view, it wasn't too much for Batman to say that he was a normal human. After paying attention to Robin's combat strength, Thea's impression of Barbara Suter was that he was a man of few words. However, she didn't expect his fighting style to be of the hot-blooded type. His long black hair danced in the wind, and from time to time, she could hear the sound of his short stick hitting the killer crocodile's body. His strength was really good. He didn't waste Batman's years of training. Thea was conceited that if she didn't use her technological equipment, she should be stronger than him. However, there was also a bit of luck involved. It wasn't a sure win, and if she made a big mistake, she might be defeated. The current situation was very much like a martial artist fighting a normal human with great strength. Although every punch and kick of the normal human was fatal, it was meaningless if the powerful force couldn't hit the opponent. Robin was sure to win. Chapter 58. Robin naturally saw that the two women had already come to his side. As the successor of Batman, who was a bit of a clean freak, he also had a very chivalrous demeanor. He shouted loudly, "Don't go, I can deal with him." Hearing him say that, Thea was a lot more relieved. In fact, she didn't have the slightest intention of going up to help. This killer crocodile came out of nowhere, and the scales on his body had a particularly disgusting mucus. Just looking at it made her feel uncomfortable. Catwoman grew up in the slums, so she could maintain a certain degree of tolerance for mucus. But just now, the wind changed slightly, blowing a rotten smell from the place where the two were fighting. Catwoman, who was caught off guard, hurriedly hid to the side. It was too smelly. She was known as Catwoman. Although she wasn't at the level of a cat, her sense of sight and smell had reached an extremely strong level. This sudden smell made her almost vomit out her lunch. The two women tacitly exchanged glances with each other. They were surprised to find that the two of them didn't have the intention to rush up. They were secretly relieved. Both of them thought in their hearts, "I'm not afraid of being dirty, smelly, I'm just protecting Robin's dignity as a man. If you don't want to, then don't go up." As if it was yesterday, the two women were watching the battle between Batman and Shiva. They crossed their arms and watched from the side, and from time to time, they would make some comments. Robin didn't know the trajectory of the two's hearts. His mouth said that he didn't want to, but in his heart, he was thinking that they should hurry up and fight together. He didn't have rhinitis, so after smelling the stench for 10 minutes, his nose was almost numb. He thought that after he shouted, the two heroes would rush up to help regardless of anything. He never thought that the two women would stand aside and watch. What's going on? Robin was a bit puzzled. Catwoman had always been warm-hearted, so she shouldn't leave him in the lurch. Was the problem with this girl from Star City? Is the crime rate in Star City so low because you guys are so honest? You don't want it and you don't want it. Previously, Robin had always thought that the people of Gotham were two-faced and two-faced. This made him, who was an upright person, extremely uncomfortable with it. However, the actions of the people of Star City today had really surprised him. He unexpectedly missed the cunning style of Gotham. Indeed, a house of gold and silver was not as good as one's own dog house. We, the people of Gotham, also had our redeeming qualities. Thea didn't know that her actions had already labeled Star City as a real city. She was also thinking about how to deal with this kind of enemy, but she couldn't come up with a good idea. This might be the natural enemy of heroines. Let alone herself, even the female Superman and Wonder Woman wouldn't dare to fight him in close combat. Looking at how he was covered in mucus, every time Robin's baton hit him, it would splash a lot of indescribable things everywhere. Would Wonder Woman dare to use the lasso? Do you dare to use your treasured sword to chop me? Unless she didn't want the old one and was ready to use a new one. The best way to deal with this guy was to shoot a frost arrow from afar, freeze him into a big ice block, and then bury him deep underground. It would be safe and would prevent him from polluting the air. The mucus on his body might even promote the growth of plants. The more Thea thought about it, the more disgusted she felt. While her imagination was running wild, the outcome of the battle had already been decided. Robin used a Sambo joint technique to break Killer Croc's left hand, or should it be called left claw. Following that, he put away his baton and threw the enemy over his shoulder, but he misjudged the enemy's weight and his own strength. Only half of the shoulder throw was completed. It was thrown out, but the force was almost non-existent. Killer Crocodile didn't seize the opportunity to attack. Instead, it jumped into the lake. It was unknown whether Killer Crocodile was afraid of being beaten or he was naturally timid. When he swam to the center of the lake, he popped his head out of the water to provoke Robin. Perhaps his vocal cords had deteriorated, but the sound coming out of his mouth didn't sound like a human's voice, but some kind of incomprehensible roar. It wasn't appropriate for the two women to continue watching, so they quickly walked towards Robin. However, after taking a few steps, they stopped at the same time. There was no other way. Robin's body was now full of smell, especially after the last shoulder throw. He was stained with a lot of messy things. The originally black and red skin-tight clothes were now covered in patches of white and green mucus. Needless to say, it was disgusting. Thea made an inviting gesture to Catwoman, which meant that she didn't know him well, and that she was his teammate, so she should go up and talk to him. At the same time, she thought mischievously, Robin, if you don't shower 8 times when you go back home, Barbara won't let you enter the house. Catwoman couldn't blame Thea for her lack of loyalty. This was her teammate, and it was indeed a little too much for her to stay away from him. She could only pinch her nose and go up to talk to him. Robin was the same as Batman. On the surface, he seemed to be tolerant of women, but in fact, he didn't know how to talk to women. Looking at him following behind Barbara every day without saying a word, it was obvious that he was a big boy who was so honest that he was almost dull. So, not to mention that the two girls were just watching, even if they wanted to hit him when he was down or even stab him in the back, he would only ask why and if there were any difficulties. He wouldn't stab them in the back. Are you hurt? Catwoman tried her best to hide her sense of smell, hinting that she didn't smell anything, and recalled the delicious taste of fried fish, grilled fish, fried fish, and so on. What? Crocodiles were also fish. Crocodiles were fish, and they were reptiles. Catwoman, who was very sensitive to fish, would tell everyone that they had nothing to do with fish. No, no. Robin, who was fighting with his blood boiling, didn't know that there were so many things attached to his body. He only felt that although the enemy had run away, the stench was still lingering around his nasal mucosa. He wondered if his nose was damaged. He went back and found a doctor to check on him. Superheroes didn't have medical insurance, and they had to be treated in advance if there was a problem with their bodies. He was a little angry when he saw that Killer Crocodile hadn't run far, and had instead poked his head out of the water to provoke him. In fact, it wasn't just Thea. Batman's team wasn't good at water battles either, or it could be said that other than the Sea King, superheroes didn't have the habit of fighting underwater. So, there was really no good way to deal with such a guy other than to trick him into fighting on land. Come up if you have the ability, I can kill you with one hand. Robin used all his taunting skills, trying to trick the other party out first. Come down if you have the ability, I'll give you a handicap of my legs. Killer Crocodile wasn't a fool, and he still had the IQ of an ordinary person. Although Thea and Catwoman were standing a little far away, they were still surrounding him. He couldn't even beat Robin, so how could he go up and seek death? Next, it was time for a war of words. Come down. Come up. Come down if you have the ability. Come up if you have the ability. The two of them scolded each other from a distance for 5 minutes, and reality proved that no one was more stupid than the other. Killer Crocodile wasn't fooled at all, and he floated steadily on the water. At the same time, his stubborn temper rose. He thought to himself that even if you have help, I'm not afraid in the water. I won't go out even if you beat me to death, I'll anger you to death. Just as the two sides were in a stalemate, a motorcycle came from afar with a beep sound. Chapter 59. Yo, it's Barbara. She's fast. Catwoman, who had good eyesight, was the first to notice her. Wasn't that right? Batgirl, who was wearing a black cloak, yellow gloves, and yellow boots, quickly approached them like a gust of wind. Robin, are you okay? Barbara ignored the two girls who were watching from the side. She saw Robin standing by the lake with his hands on his waist, panting. She thought he was injured. Actually, Robin had shouted too hard just now and was suffering from a chest pain. He was different from Killer Crocodile. Killer Crocodile was 2 meters tall and weighed more than 500 kilograms. Usually, his voice was like thunder. He was just an ordinary person, and even among the heroes, he was considered thin and weak. It was indeed tiring to shout at the top of his lungs like a human speaker for 5 minutes. Seeing that he didn't reply, Barbara thought he was seriously injured. She looked reproachfully at the two girls who were standing upright at the side. You're too much. She threw the motorcycle aside and ran towards Robin. You're blaming us for this. Thea felt that this person was too brainless. He took everything for granted and used his own thoughts to measure everything. What was the same as what he knew was right, and what was different was wrong. Seeing that she was about to run over to Robin, she gave Catwoman a teasing look. Both of them changed their expressions to that of watching a good show. I-oh. Barbara ran really fast. It seemed that she and Robin had quite a deep relationship. However, when she was 2 meters away from Robin, she realized that something was wrong. Robin's white and green clothes made his originally very serious combat uniform look like a scavenger's. Moreover, there was a strong pungent smell. Anyway, she had never smelled such a bad smell since she was a spoiled child. She hurriedly gestured for Robin to stop. Actually, Robin didn't go forward. Instead, he took a few steps back. He was simple, but not stupid. After scolding by the lake for a long time, He had already realized the abnormality of his body. If he were to give his girlfriend a hug with his broken clothes, there would only be two results. Either Barbara couldn't take it and turned into a black person, or he would be beaten until he turned into charcoal. There was no question of breaking up here. It was either you die or I die. There was no difference whether they broke up or not. Seeing that her boyfriend did not pounce on her, Barbara heaved a sigh of relief. She carefully examined his accessories again, and the more she looked at them, the more disgusted she felt. She kept retreating. When she retreated until she could no longer smell the pungent odor, she found herself standing beside the two heroines. She said unhappily, "You already knew. Are you happy? Laugh if you want to." Thea chuckled. She didn't intend to give her any face at all. Once again, she fully displayed the simple and optimistic spirit of the people of Star City. "Since you agreed to let me laugh, then I'll laugh." Watching the two of them act like they were performing a stage play, it was indeed very funny. If he could recite a few more lines from Romeo and Juliet, the effect would be even better. Catwoman couldn't be so heartless. She still had to work in this team. She held back her laughter and changed the topic. "What should we do next?" Yes, what should he do next? The five-man team was all present. Although there were no cameras here, Thea saw a drone hovering above their heads. Felicity automatically stood in the mascot position and cheered for everyone. "However, the four of us are all damage dealers, and we are all agility-type damage dealers. Against a boss with thick HP, this team composition is terrible. Of course, two of us didn't have any equipment. How are we supposed to fight like this? Let's just retreat." Barbara didn't know what Thea was thinking. She asked politely, "Miss Thea, do you have any suggestions?" No. Thea had only been in Gotham for a short period of time. Even the names of the monsters were told to her by Catwoman. When she thought of Catwoman, she naturally thought of the question she had asked before. "How did you guys catch this guy in the past? Didn't he have this powerful stench aura when you guys caught him the last time? Or is this a new skill that he learned recently? Or did he come up with it to deal with you guys? If that's the case, this guy who's about to degenerate into the Cretaceous period has quite a high IQ. How did you catch him in the past?" In response to Thea's question, Barbara immediately said that even though she looked mature, she was still a child. She really didn't know anything about the past. She wanted to ask the middle-aged woman beside her for more details. Catwoman thought for a while. She had no recollection of this monster. Maybe she was busy at the time and robbed the rich to help the poor. She only knew that she didn't do it. If she had seen it in the past, she would have remembered it. Seeing the two of them shaking their heads, Thea knew that things were bad. Fortunately, there was someone who seemed to know about it. She said to Barbara, "Call Robin over. We'll ask him." Actually, they were not far away. They could have shouted at the top of their lungs. However, Thea was afraid that there was a secret. If they heard it, the killer crocodile in the lake would also hear it. It would be embarrassing to read the strategy in front of the boss, right? Therefore, it was best to call Robin over and ask him softly. Barbara waved her hand and called Robin, who was still in a daze by the lake, over. "What's the matter?" Robin walked over, but when he was 2 meters away from them, the three women raised one hand and gestured for him to stop. He could only stand there helplessly. Barbara asked the question again. "I don't know either." "Don't you know?" Robin was puzzled. If he knew, would he be in such a miserable state? He didn't even know if Barbara would let him into the house tonight. "Do you think I'm crazy?" "I'm happy to be in such a miserable state." The few of them were a little confused. They looked at each other. Was Batman the only one who knew? Did he just kill the boss without anyone noticing? But they didn't know where he was now. Did Alfred know? Did Director Gordon know? Thea was completely convinced by their team. Look at Boss Batman. Whether it was the enemy or his own people, they all recorded their abilities and restraining methods in a small black notebook. You guys, on the other hand, didn't even have a record of what you fought. You guys were a bunch of good-for-nothings. In the end, the three members of Bat's family looked at Thea at the same time and asked her if she had any ideas. Of course, Thea had an idea. Her principle was to be prepared in advance. She had thought about it earlier. Frost Arrow was the most suitable way to deal with this stinky and strong guy. She would hide far away and shoot an arrow. She didn't believe that he wouldn't be frozen. If one arrow wasn't enough, she would shoot 2 arrows. The problem was that she didn't prepare many arrows. Coupled with the high cost, she only prepared 5 frost arrows. Her original plan was to use them against Bane. That guy had a big head and a thick neck. His arms could run horses and his fists could stand people. Perhaps his only weakness was his slow speed. If she limited his speed, he would be knocked down by a wave of ranged attacks no matter how strong he was. She could only worry about the future. She had to deal with the present first. Thea nodded. I have an idea, but I have to go back and get my equipment. You guys hold him back first. I'll be back soon. She picked up the motorcycle that Bobla had ridden earlier and drove out. Chapter 60. Bring me along. Catwoman saw that she was going back and jumped onto the motorcycle as well. She did not bring any equipment with her and only had a dagger on her. That dagger might be a little lethal against normal people, but it could only be used as a toothpick against that atavistic crocodile. We'll be back soon. You guys hold him back first. Thea said as she stepped on the gas and the motorcycle sped away. Easy for you to say, but how are we supposed to hold him back? The remaining 2 looked at each other lovingly. Barbara pointed at the center of the lake and said, continue scolding him. Don't stop. Robin wanted to say, why don't you scold him instead? Scold him. I've been yelling at the top of my lungs for almost 10 minutes. Although it's a form of scolding, which is a form of mutual harm, she can take a sip of the water to soothe her throat. My throat is almost smoking. However, looking at Barbara's indisputable eyes, he could only accept this difficult task with pain and joy. He would listen to his girlfriend and do whatever she told him to do. Although it would ruin his image as an honest and courteous young gentleman if he spouted vulgarities in front of his sweetheart, there were only the 2 of them here. He could not let Barbara scold him personally. A man should be more ruthless to himself. Come on. He opened the collar of his tight-fitting combat suit. He usually did not feel like there was a problem, but after 10 minutes of yelling, he noticed it. As he continued to inhale and make sounds, the ventilation at the collar was too poor and his entire neck was covered in sweat. Bobla was elated when she saw that her boyfriend had obediently stepped forward to scold her. She felt that she still had some tricks up her sleeves. Although her mother had long run away, and her close friends were infinitely close to zero, she was still self-taught in the art of taming her husband, right? But after listening for 2 minutes, she realized that something was wrong. In the past, Robin was a taciturn person who wouldn't say a word even if hit 3 times with a stick. When he spoke, he would say things like, Batman is right or Barbara is right. Today, in just a few minutes of scolding, his words were tricky and vicious. It was really an eye-opener. What's more, he didn't repeat a single one of his vicious sentences. How was this possible? Barbara's gaze became even sharper. Could it be that he had found a little vixen behind her back? At the thought that he might be having an affair, Barbara couldn't care less about Robin's strong aura. She grabbed his collar and asked, "Who taught you these words? Where is she?" As long as Robin mentioned a location in the next second, she would immediately rush over. She would push aside the future of the people of Gotham. If she wasn't happy, what was the use of the happiness of the people of Gotham? Ah, who taught you that? Oh, it's Miss Smoky. Robin was stunned by the question. He didn't understand what she meant. He racked his brain but still couldn't figure out the logical relationship. He could only answer honestly. After that, he pointed to the headset he was wearing. Felicity. Barbara hurriedly took out her earpiece and put it on. Before she came out, Felicity had specially handed her one, saying that it was convenient for communication. She didn't have a good impression of the duo from Star City, so she didn't wear it. The earpiece was quickly connected. Welcome, Barbara, to our chat room. I'll talk to you later. We still have important matters to attend to. Robin, please continue. The voice in the earpiece was very clear. She could hear Felicity hurriedly greeting Robin and began their important matters. She would say something in the earpiece, and Robin would repeat it with the human speaker outside. Barbara only felt that the scolding was extremely unpleasant and vicious. If she was in Thea's position, her blood vessels would have exploded long ago. She recalled how Thea's insults made her lose her dinner. Were the people of Star City all so good at scolding people? To be able to scold someone on the spot without repeating a single sentence, what kind of vocabulary did that require? Robin, take a break for half a minute. I'll find a new one. You should drink some water too. Felicity's tapping on the keyboard could be heard faintly shouting, that baldy over there, pass me a bottle of water, what the hell is this? Why is she looking for a new one? Barbara didn't understand. Was there a story behind this that she didn't know? Robin and Robin looked at each other. If his girlfriend had stared at him like this in the past, Robin would have fainted from happiness. However, he really didn't have the energy to do so now. He was panting heavily. He wanted to drink water, but he didn't have any. There was a layer of unknown substance floating on the surface of the lake. Killer Croc had a strong digestive system, so he could drink it, but he couldn't. He licked his lips and tried to think of something to quench his thirst. "Ah, I'm back. Let's continue," Felicity said energetically. "Wait, I'll interrupt you. What were you looking for just now?" Barbara felt that she wouldn't be able to sleep tonight if she didn't get to the bottom of this. 100 Classic Scoldings in Real Combat, the latest edition of 2007. Have you guys seen it? I've seen a few of them, and I always thought it was worth collecting. I didn't expect to use it today. Ha! Robin, let's continue. Felicity's words strayed off the topic. Fortunately, she still remembered the important matter at hand and forcefully brought the topic back. You people from Star City know how to have fun. Barbara felt that she had wasted her 20 years of life. She silently watched Robin imitate her and scold her. Needless to say, this was indeed a classic. At first, Barbara listened to a few particularly interesting sentences and memorized them carefully so that she could use them in certain situations in the future. However, after a while, she realized that every sentence was a classic. She gritted her teeth and stomped her feet. Then, she turned on the recording device on her combat suit and started recording. At this moment, Killer Croc, who was in the middle of the lake, was feeling very uncomfortable. When Robin first started scolding, he didn't take it seriously. He only wanted these annoying people to leave as soon as possible so that he could get ashore and escape. This man-made lake didn't conform to the country's standards. He didn't know how much money the contractor had embezzled. This was a pure lake with only a muddy passage at the bottom. It was the one he swam from the Chinese restaurant. There must be a lot of enemies waiting to ambush him, so he couldn't go back. He swam around the bottom of the lake and couldn't find any other way out. However, he didn't despair. He was underwater while they were on the water. So be it. There was food and drink underwater. Who's afraid of who? As he pondered, he caught a small fish that swam past him and ate it in a few bites. He sneered at the people on the shore. When Seal left with the feline girl, he was happy for a while, thinking that these guys were going to retreat. But soon, he found that the young man who had thrown him to the ground had come to the lakeside again and was cursing at him with his cheeks puffed up. These people are really stupid. Are they trying to use such a low-level method to provoke me? Although my body has grown bigger, my brain is still smart. I'm a famous detective. No, I'm me. I'm a firework with a different color. He caught another fish and ate it slowly. Looking at Robin on the shore, Killer Croc was too lazy to come out and scold him. He would just treat it as a stand-up comedy for him. However, the more he listened, the more he felt that something was wrong. It was because Killer Croc's scolding was too harsh. In a short period of time, the names of countless relatives had come out from Killer Croc's mouth. His immediate relatives had already been mentioned. Now, he was even talking about his grandfather's grandfather's generation. Chapter 61. Killer Crocodile wanted to retort, but he remembered that he was abandoned when he was young and had to hide in the sewers every day. He was not like the 4 little turtles next door who had a grandpa who turned into a rat. He could only say a few words because he was smart and eager to learn. However, his poor vocabulary was not as good as the guy on the shore. Fortunately, the target of his atavism was crocodiles. These reptiles were naturally cold-blooded, which meant that their blood circulation was slower and they were not easily angered. Furthermore, Robin's brain was somewhat damaged after the mutation. Robin's scolding was a little too sophisticated. Many of his jokes needed to be repeated a few times to understand the meaning. Killer Crocodile was unable to understand the old ones and new ones popped up. Hey, Barbara, Thea, and the others will enter the battlefield in a minute. We have to lure him out. I'll open a channel for you. Join in and scold him, Felicity said hurriedly through the earpiece. I have to join in and scold him. Barbara found it a little hard to believe. She had received higher education since she was young, and she had never done such a thing before. She was a little nervous. Would I be able to do it? However, looking at Robin's red face and thick neck from scolding, it seemed to be a very enjoyable thing to do. A strange sense of guilt emerged in her heart. Is this what they meant by learning well for 3 years and learning bad for 3 days? As a knowledgeable woman of the new era, she couldn't leave any regrets for herself. She had achieved both of these achievements by going to the kitchen and killing the wooden horse and climbing over the wall. In order to fight against mistresses and hooligans in the future, I have to make up for this shortcoming. Today is a rare opportunity. Let's do it. I've found a mixed version for you guys. The title of this post is Let Your Opponent Be Human Again 07 trial version. It's said to be very effective. Let's try it out. I'll adjust the channel first. Robin will explain to Barbara the things to take note of. Hee hee. Felicity was in high spirits through the earpiece. She had never been this happy in her life. There are things to take note of. Can't you just shout at the top of your lungs? Barbara was a little confused. Robin was afraid that she would be suffocated, so he stood 3 meters away and said seriously, "Dear, you have to pay attention to a few things. First, you have to inhale from your lower abdomen and transmit the sound to your vocal cords through your chest. At this time, you have to be careful not to release the sound all at once. You have to do it step by step. Let me show you." Without waiting for Barbara's response, Robin stood with his head held high and his chest puffed out. Like a singer practicing his voice, he performed a few standard vocal movements with perfect articulation. She felt pretty good after singing, and even gave Barbara a thumbs up with a hint of encouragement in her eyes, implying that she should give it a try too. Actually, Robin was getting a little carried away. Although he was usually quiet, that was because he was brought out by Batman. Master Bruce had never smiled ever since his parents died. If you saw him grinning from ear to ear, it meant that he was definitely under the Joker's control. Everyone could restart the Holy Grail War. Ah! No, it was the cloak war. Today, after being guided by Felicity, the young man's blood that was usually suppressed was stimulated. He felt that he was too happy to scold. Now, he was full of energy, and the haze of the past was swept away. Looking at her boyfriend who was full of sunshine and fighting spirit, Bobla could not help but think, is this still my Robin? My husband is not so funny. When Master Bat comes back and sees his proud disciple like this, he will be dumbfounded. Ah, I'm back. I've adjusted everything. Bobla, can you hear me? It's very clear. Then, let's start. At this time, Killer Crocodile in the middle of the lake saw that not only the young man was scolding him, but also the woman beside him. Are they going to team up to scold me? My blood circulation is slow, so I'm not angry. Do you think my crocodile skin is fake? Let me tell you, the skin on my body is thick, especially the skin on my face, which is outstanding and firm. Relying on his extraordinary talent, Killer Crocodile listened in the lake calmly. However, he soon realized that this time, it was different from before. The previous scolding was just unpleasant and sarcastic, but this time, the mixed team was unexpectedly strong. Maybe it was because they were a couple, but their voices were very similar. In addition to Felicity's special arrangement, the male and female voices were a little harmonious. At first, Bobla was a little uncomfortable, but soon, she used the special generation method that Robin had learned. Her high-pitched female voice and Robin's deep voice created a wonderful physical phenomenon. The sound of the mixed voice was more than one level higher, and the two's voices rippled on the surface of the lake. Toward the end of the scolding, Barbara had completely abandoned her modesty. She even used the hymns that she had learned from the choir when she was young. She would smile at Robin from time to time and throw flirtatious glances at him. Her voice changed according to her master's tone, sometimes holy and sometimes seductive. Robin looked at his lover with a face full of happiness. It was also the first time that he discovered the potential of his lover. He loved this saintess and seductive tone. He felt that no matter what her identity was or what profession she was the woman that he loved the most. Their affection for each other completely angered Killer Crocodile in the lake. As a cold-blooded creature that had been single for 30 years, he couldn't suppress his anger this time. You two are too much. If you want to show off your love, go home and do it. Why are you hurting me like this? His previous calmness had long been thrown to the back of his mind. There was only one thought in his mind, and that was to burn this adulterous couple to death. Killer Crocodile also forgot his original intention of hiding in the lake. In order to increase his momentum and suppress their decadent voices, he shouted, "Kill," and rushed out of the lake. This was a clip from a web novel that he had read in the sewers when he was young. It was said to be a translation from the distant Eastern world. In the book, whenever the protagonist was bullied or surrounded, he would shout, "Kill," and then his strength would increase exponentially. In fact, there was also a break, but he felt that it wasn't imposing enough, so he gave up. When he was young, he was bullied and beaten every day because of his appearance. Every time he shouted, "Kill," he would muster up the courage to resist. Over time, many people called him Killer Crocodile. This name was actually not bad, or at least that was what he thought. The two people on the shore were feeling refreshed. Batman's disappearance, Gotham's chaos, and all their troubles had disappeared. It was as if the sky had collapsed and they could use it as a blanket. If it wasn't for the wrong time, they would have used the sky as a blanket and the earth as a bed. Be careful, he's coming out. Felicity, who was controlling the drone, was indeed the best teammate of 2007. She immediately reminded the two of them. Oh, I almost forgot, there was still an enemy in the lake. Chapter 62. Killer Crocodile ran to the shore and pounced on Robin with a ferocious expression. He didn't even notice that Barbara was unbuckling her belt, but she was actually holding a whip. Actually, this was easy to understand. When a single dog saw a couple showing off in front of him, his first reaction would be to bite the male dog. He wouldn't say that the two of them were too incompatible, so he would bite the female dog to death and then live happily with the male dog. After all, most single dogs were still males, and there might be a few females in between. There was too little data to be universal. Of course, the above-mentioned probability was not completely zero. There were still some gay and single people in life. Every single one of them was a precious breed. We must love and be tolerant. This was definitely true love. It was like seeing a perverted man blocking a handsome man and a beautiful woman on the road. He would slap the beautiful woman's face and drag the handsome man away, ignoring the surrounding gazes. At this moment, we should never take out our phones. Hello, is this 111? At this moment, we only need to silently send our blessings. Robin was secretly happy when he saw Killer Crocodile pouncing on him. He was not happy because he found his true love, but because he was afraid that Killer Crocodile would hit Barbara. Whether he could beat Killer Crocodile or not was another matter. He didn't want Killer Crocodile to knock out his fragrant girlfriend. Although Killer Crocodile had soaked in the lake for a while, there was still a pungent sour smell on him. You can do all you want to me. This was the true portrayal of Robin's current state of mind. His voice was hoarse from all the shouting. This time, he finally lured Killer Crocodile out, so he couldn't let him run away again. Signaling Barbara to cut off Killer Crocodile's escape route, Robin moved the battlefield a few steps closer to the shore. Felicity, have they arrived? Barbara saw her boyfriend fighting with Killer Crocodile again. Robin's condition was not as good as before. He had been standing under the sun for half an hour and hadn't rested at all. Killer Crocodile was like his own home in the water. He had enough rest and had eaten 2 fishes, so his stamina had recovered by more than half. Under this situation, Robin, who was mentally exhausted, could only try his best to dodge Killer Crocodile's attacks. Occasionally, he would counterattack, but it was ineffective. We're already here. If we rush out, we'll scare him. We'll fight our way out at the crucial moment. Thea's voice came from the headset. Actually, she and Catwoman had been here for a while, but they felt that the couple's cursing together was very powerful, so they hid nearby and didn't dare to come out. Xia did have the intention to kill the crocodile in one shot. She had already prepared her bow and arrow. As long as Killer Crocodile showed a flaw, she would show him how a refrigerator was made. Feline Girl didn't care at all. She was just a person who enjoyed watching the show. She was a villain in her early years, but she had recently changed her ways. Since she was caught off guard, the Killer Crocodile couldn't possibly escape, so she hid in the bushes and watched happily. She didn't care, but Barbara couldn't be indifferent. Seeing that her boyfriend was getting more and more tired, she picked up her belt, which was actually a long whip, and joined the battle. Thea wanted to see how good she was. After all, they still needed to work together for a while, but she wasn't disappointed. She just felt that she didn't live up to her name. For some unknown reason, Barbara had put in a lot of effort into her whip. It was obvious that she liked this sort of mid-range weapon very much. During battle, she would constantly make use of her female agility to move her feet. This sort of fighting method was a little too tricky, but it wouldn't be a problem for her to use it against normal people or small monsters. In fact, it would be very efficient and beautiful. However, this fighting method would be full of flaws when faced with a slightly stronger enemy. If she was only at this level, Thea could defeat her without using any weapons, and the chances of winning were very high. At present, the strongest member of their group was Catgirl. Years of life and death on the streets, and her style of doing things that were both good and evil, had increased her combat strength exponentially. It should be noted that she had received almost no training. She had never attended a serious class like Xia, and all her kung fu was honed in actual combat. Robin's strength was slightly weaker. Batman valued this successor too much and taught him all the moves he was proud of. However, Robin's physique was thin and weak, and there were many moves that he couldn't use with his physical condition. Perhaps he was aware of this problem, so he artificially leaned on the path of agility and dexterity, making him look a little different now. Barbara was even worse. She was at the level of a hero. If she didn't make any major adjustments, her achievements would be limited. Just as Thea was seriously thinking about the problem, Felicity's voice came again. Don't just fight. Keep scolding. What if he runs away? I'll continue. Keep scolding. The young couple looked at each other and saw a trace of anticipation in each other's eyes. Let's do it then. After all, Felicity was the one who said it. They repeated it, and it became a conditioned reflex. They didn't even think about it. They just kept scolding and hitting each other. You stinky son of AB*TCH. You're polluting us physically, so we'll deal with you with trash talk. Come on. Let's hurt each other. In fact, Killer Croc was already thinking of running away. Although he didn't have Spider-Man's spider senses, his atavism had strengthened his sixth sense. Although he only saw two enemies, he had a bad feeling in his heart. Just as he was about to go back to eat his fish, he saw that the couple was still scolding each other. As the two of them sang together, his anger that had subsided soared again. Are you done yet? Don't you know that you should leave a way out? He didn't care about his limited vocabulary. He opened his mouth and started scolding them. Felicity in the headset also started to work. She picked the stories related to crocodiles to read. In a short while, she had finished explaining the process of making crocodile leather bags. Now, she was describing how to cook crocodile meat to make it more nutritious. Robin and Felicity didn't use their brains, so their fighting strength was basically unaffected. However, the more Killer Croc listened, the angrier he became. Although he still thought of himself as a human, as time passed, he was ostracized by human society. Listening to Robin's description of all kinds of skinning and pulling tendons, as well as all kinds of braising and stewing, he relaxed his attacks on Barbara. In fact, she was the one who was jumping up and down nimbly like a rabbit. Killer Crocodile couldn't hit anyone at all. Since it couldn't hit anyone, it didn't attack anymore. It ignored Barbara and rained punches on Robin. Robin had already used up a lot of his stamina, so he could only barely resist such a fierce attack. Barbara couldn't bear to see her boyfriend get beaten up, but her lethality was really limited. She could only swing her hand and wrap the whip around the Killer Crocodile's leg, hoping to rely on her own strength to hold him back and buy time for Robin to regroup. Chapter 63. Although Barbara's strength was weaker than Killer Crocodile's, it was only at the level of an ordinary person. Usually, such strength would not even be able to offset Killer Crocodile's own weight, let alone move him. However, Barbara's timing was very clever. She stopped him just when he was about to use up all his strength. Ha! Killer Crocodile was chasing after Robin when his right leg was suddenly entangled by the whip. He could not help but stop moving forward. It was a good opportunity. The feline girl, who had been hiding for a long time, saw the opportunity created by her teammate. Without hesitation, she immediately flew up and shot two throwing knives at the Killer Crocodile's eyes that were not protected by scales. At the same time, she pulled out her long whip and wrapped it around his left leg. This was a gift from the unromantic master bat on a date. To be honest, it was quite useful. Robin had been hit by Killer Crocodile's barrage of punches many times. Although he had protected his vital parts, his whole body was still sore. This guy was too strong. The protective suit only provided a certain amount of protection, and the bruises on his body were inevitable. Seeing that his two teammates had restrained the enemy's movements, he did not dare to slack off. He knew that the two worked so hard to subdue Killer Crocodile because they wanted to save their reputation in front of outsiders. As the only man in the team, he could not lose to the girls. He took a step, ran behind Killer Crocodile, and punched him in the neck. His team's motto was not to kill, and he had no intention of changing his allegiance. Although he did not understand how much this guy could contribute to society, he still had to abide by the rules of the Bat Gate. Being able to knock the enemy out was a very perfect ending in Robin's opinion. A normal person would indeed faint if they were hit in the neck. This scene often appeared in movies and TV shows. The protagonist or the villain would throw the person into a small dark room, then hide behind the door and hit the target lightly. It was somewhat artistic, but the principle was correct. People who were familiar with the structure of the human body and had been trained could do it. Robin was naturally trained, and he was very confident in his skills. However, he did not expect that this confident punch would have an unexpected effect. Was Killer Crocodile a normal person? Emotionally, he felt that he was very normal. When he had nothing to do, he would roll in the mud and catch a few small fish and shrimps for breakfast. Was this life not normal? He had seen many women smearing mud on their faces. It was said to be called seaweed mud or something. He heard that it was quite expensive. That was nonsense. He saw that the mud was no different from the sewage in his house. Another time, he hid far away and saw some very short yellow-skinned people from the Foot Basin country eating a raw fish. After eating, they were even singing and dancing in celebration. Why were they so happy? Could it be that they don't usually eat raw fish? That must be it. Killer Crocodile felt that these people were not doing as well as him. Seeing how pitiful they were, he even threw a few fishes down. He wondered if they had eaten them. Through constant contact with human society, Killer Crocodile did not feel that there was anything wrong with his lifestyle. Other than looking different from them, there was no difference. This made him feel that there was nothing wrong with him. But was that really the case? There were many people in Arkham who claimed that they were not crazy. The truth was that these people were crazy. The more they said that, the more serious and incurable their condition was. On the other hand, those who quietly pondered over the patrolling pattern were the ones who were not crazy. Killer Crocodile was one of these people who claimed that he was still human, but in reality, he was not. Physiologically speaking, the genetic difference between him and a human was as big as 2 streets. If he did not stop his current degeneration, theoretically speaking, he would become a humanoid crocodile who only knew how to kill in 20 years. Of course, all of this was still far away. Killer Crocodile did not care about what would happen in the future. First, he needed to get out of this crisis. His legs were tied up by the 2 girls. Robin had already circled behind him. He gathered all his strength and punched the back of his neck. Ah! The imagined enemy fell to the ground, receiving the admiring gazes of the girls, and marrying Barbara in the future did not happen. Robin was dumbfounded as he watched Killer Crocodile roll on the ground with his hands on his head. The 2 girls could only retract their whips and watch from afar to avoid being dragged into the mess. No matter how he looked at it, it didn't look like he was going to faint. Could it be that his martial arts had regressed so much that he missed such a simple punch? Robin's face was a little ugly. Killer Crocodile's face was even uglier than him. His body was too big, so his reaction speed was a little slow. When he realized that Robin had circled behind him, he was 1 step too late, so he did not dodge the punch. Normal people who were hit by Robin's punch full of true Yuan chakra would definitely faint, and they would not wake up for at least 3 days. Even if they woke up, they would wake up because of hunger. But Killer Crocodile was not normal. His physiological structure had become infinitely similar to that of a crocodile with the increase of age. A crocodile had a dense cluster of neurons below the neck near the spine to control the balance and overall coordination of the body. From the perspective of an ordinary person looking at a crocodile, the crocodile's head, neck and body were as thick as a bucket. It was impossible to find the specific position, but a skilled hunter could find this area. If you don't want to use the old-fashioned method of burying a knife in the crocodile's path and let it cut open its stomach by itself, but you want to challenge it like a warrior, then you only need to find this position and take a dagger and stab it fiercely, then the crocodile will be paralyzed. At that time, you can kill it or scratch it, up to you. Unfortunately, Robin hit this position. If he had a knife in his hand, the battle would have been over by now, and they would have carried the trophies back to the mission. But, he hit it empty-handed. Although the strength was great, the crocodile was famous for its thick skin. The lethality of this punch was not dizziness but pain. The severe pain made Killer Crocodile, who had thick nerves, a little unbearable. Regardless of the enemies around him, he held his head and rolled on the ground. Oh, this was a good opportunity. Thea saw the enemy rolling on the ground, and several of her people were stunned on the side. She knew that it was time for her to appear. She floated 10 meters in the air and controlled the skateboard to jump out like an arrow. Flying to a distance of 30 meters away from Killer Crocodile, she sniffed gently with her nose. There was no strange smell. In fact, she could shoot from a distance of 100 meters, but in order to not be so special, several of her friends and relatives were more or less stained with a mess of things. Thea held the idea of unity, so she found a relatively close distance. She took out a frost arrow, calculated the distance in advance, aimed at his calf, and shot out the arrow. She didn't want to cause any conflicts because of the death of the enemy in front of these temporary teammates who were kind to Mother Mary. Chapter 64. Killer Croc was still rolling on the ground. Although his crocodile instincts warned him of danger, he was in so much pain that he had forgotten his own name. His brain did not receive the danger signal at all. Or rather, even if it did, there were no brain cells to analyze it. Compared to the pain in his back, this light arrow was nothing. He also saw the person who shot the arrow at him. How could this person float in the sky? As a single croc who had lived in the sewers for 20 years, he had never seen such a high-end thing. Was this the plane that those people were talking about? Subconsciously, he felt that it did not look like it. It seemed that a plane should be flying very high. His mind wandered for a while and he was surprised to find that his back did not hurt as much. This was great news for him. As long as he could move again, he could run back to the lake. The flying thing could not possibly go into the water, right? As for the 3 people on the ground, Killer Croc felt that he could still get out after taking a few hits. At the same time, he thought that he would not come out no matter what they said in the water. His plan was pretty good. Just as he was about to move his legs and charge on the road, why didn't he move? He wanted to move his body but found that he could not move. There was a bone-piercing chill running through his body. Subconsciously, he lowered his head and said, "Wow." Why was there ice below his neck? His huge head swayed left and right. Only his neck could move. He looked around. It was still the same environment as before. The adulterous couple and the guy who jumped out and threw knives at him were watching from the side. As the most familiar with Thea, Catwoman was a little dumbfounded. When the two went back to get the equipment, Thea roughly explained her fighting process, such as shooting an arrow from afar and restricting the enemy's movement speed. At that time, she thought that Thea was the type of archer who could shoot wherever she wanted from 100 meters away. One arrow would make a hole in the enemy's leg and restrict the enemy's movement speed. The rest of the team would swarm up and chop the enemy until he could not take care of himself. Then, they would loot the corpse and distribute the equipment. However, the reality was completely different. Catwoman could not tell whether the archery was good or not. The main thing was that the next scene was too scary. The enemy was turned into a big ice block. This was a killer crocodile. It was born with a height of 2 meters, and it could even show its head. If it was slightly shorter, it would be completely frozen, right? Catwoman felt that the movement speed limit in her dictionary was different from this one. She was about to turn into an ice sculpture. Was this the standard of Star City? Judging from Killer Crocodile's appearance, not to mention its speed, it would soon enter the operating theater and become a happy paraplegic. Bobla, what's that on her arrow? When Robin saw that the battle had ended, he plopped down on the ground and panted in exhaustion. However, when he saw the frozen crocodile created by Thea, he didn't know if it was because of the cold or because he was a little frightened, but after seeing the frozen crocodile created by Thea, he quickly ran to Barbara and asked her about it. It should be some kind of chemical product. I can't tell the specifics, but it's really powerful. Barbara had gone through systematic higher education, and she was much more experienced and knowledgeable than Robin, who had always relied on self-study. She pondered for a moment and gave her answer. Do you think we can study this weapon? Robin was now very fond of this unknown chemical product. If you had this arrow earlier, would you be so tired like a dead dog? I'm afraid not. Mr. Bruce won't let us use this kind of weapon. It can be used against enhancers, but our enemies are basically ordinary people. Not many of them can survive this arrow. Barbara was actually a little envious. This kind of weapon was convenient and fast. No matter how strong the enemy was, it would be able to attack from 3 points in the shape of a triangle. The enemy wouldn't be able to escape. Unfortunately, as long as Batman didn't change his principle of not killing, they could only say goodbye to this kind of weapon and fight honestly. Then what if we develop it privately? It's great as a trump card. Robin was still a little unwilling to give up. Barbara laughed coldly. Do you know how much it costs to develop this thing? Do you have a laboratory? Do you know how much professional knowledge is required? Do you plan to rely on the two of us? She continuously asked 5 to 6 questions, leaving Robin speechless. Yes, the two of them didn't have a large financial group behind them, nor were they the illegitimate children of nobles. They were poor children who grew up in a circus. Barbara was a fair, rich, and beautiful woman, but she was only at the average level. He didn't know how many assets the Quinn Group had, but even if it wasn't as big as Wayne Enterprises, the difference wouldn't be too big. He knew how Bruce's Batmobile and Batfighter were developed, and how much money it cost. Thinking about the astronomical figures, Robin felt dizzy. He could only express his envy and jealousy towards the world of the rich. He should go back and take a shower, hug his wife, and live the rest of his life. Thea, what do we do now? Are we just going to leave this guy here? Catwoman looked at the big block of ice in front of her. The killer crocodile originally weighed 400 to 500 pounds, and now there was a block of ice outside. How much weight would it have to weigh? In the past, their strategy was to find the enemy, then knock him out and hang him in front of the police station. However, now that the police station had been breached, they couldn't go back for the time being. Also, they couldn't take the enemy away. The 4 of them were skinny, and they were in a team of 3 women and 1 man. The only man was so tired that he was hanging his tongue out. How could they move him? Thea honestly didn't think about this problem. Felicity didn't have a good idea either, so she might as well just follow her own plan. You guys get out of the way. I'll give him another arrow to strengthen it, and we'll leave him here. Thea pointed at Robin and Barbara, who were observing from a close distance. You're not going to kill him, are you? He's freezing to death. Barbara pointed at the ice sculpture and said. That's right, the killer crocodile's big head that was originally looking left and right had no strength to turn around. Its yellowish eyes looked helplessly into the distance, and the sharp teeth in its mouth made a clicking sound from time to time. It's okay, he won't die. Get out of the way. Thea didn't understand their strange principle. If he died, he died. If they didn't mention it, who would know? So what if they knew? This guy had degenerated to this extent. Was he still a human in the traditional sense? Was this guy protected by the law? Did he pay insurance and housing? Even if Batman jumped out now, Thea could still make him speechless. Besides, Thea didn't think that he would die from the cold. Didn't you see that Captain America was frozen for 70 years? After defrosting, he was still alive and kicking. This guy's physique was quite strong. Plus, crocodiles were naturally resistant to cold, so he wouldn't freeze to death for a while. Of course, some muscle atrophy and nerve paralysis were not within her scope of consideration. Chapter 65. Previously, she aimed at the calf, but this time, she didn't need to aim. She shot another arrow towards the upper part of the ice. This was all money. She hadn't found a fat sheep that could reimburse her. She could only hope that Master Bruce would come back soon. She really couldn't afford it. The 3 members of the Bat's family and friends didn't know what she was thinking. They only saw a flash of white light, and the humanoid killer crocodile was completely gone. An irregular 3 meters high and 5 meters wide ice block was hovering where the enemy was supposed to be. They could only vaguely see a vague figure inside the transparent part of the ice block. Several people took a long breath. Perhaps it was because of the cold. After all, after 2 shots, the surrounding heat had been completely absorbed. In theory, it could cause liquid nitrogen to be more than 100 degrees below zero. After a chemical reaction, the loss of energy through the air could not reach the necessary threshold, but it could still be maintained around -50 degrees below zero. Well, the mission is completed. I'll go first. Thea said to them with a relaxed face. She was ready to turn around and leave because she was afraid that they would ask her to take them back. It was okay to take Catwoman with her. The 2 of them had flown back and forth several times. If Catwoman asked, she would not object, but Robin and Barbara were a bit difficult. The 2 of them had fought with Killer Crocodile for a long time, and the smell on their bodies was really not good. For Barbara, she might be able to tolerate it. For the sake of being sisters of the same class, she could still take her back. But Robin's smell was unbearable. If they asked for help, she would feel uncomfortable whether she agreed or refused. So, she didn't give them a chance to speak. She had to run first. You come down first, let's have a meeting to discuss. Catwoman hurriedly pulled her back. Seeing that she couldn't run, Thea could only obediently get off the skateboard. She was pulled by several people to find an open space far away from the ice block to have this on-the-spot meeting. Shouldn't we go a little further? Will he hear us? Robin pointed to the ice block wrapped around Killer Crocodile and asked several people. Because he didn't understand the principle, he focused on Thea. He's unconscious. He can't hear us. Don't worry. Barbara didn't even wait for Thea's reply. She rebutted her boyfriend's stupid question with a few sentences. At the same time, she thought to herself, your basic knowledge is too lacking. I must enroll my boyfriend in an adult tuition class so that he can learn. If he can get a degree, it will look better when they get married. Although Babla ended the topic abruptly, Sia still nodded. Babla is right. He should be unconscious now. With a thick layer of ice, he can't hear anything. Robin was a little embarrassed. He felt that since everyone here was a woman, he should have shown more of his abilities. However, his poor performance could only be said to be contrary to his wishes. He smiled embarrassedly. Seeing that he didn't speak, the women didn't want to continue talking. Although they were discussing, they didn't have a good way to deal with this ice cube. The 3 members of the Bat family subconsciously looked at Thea, implying that this was her fault. She had to get rid of it even if she had to cry. Thea was also a little troubled. She and Felicity had considered the power and duration of the ice cube. At most, they considered the cost. She really didn't think about how to deal with the ice cube. Felicity, do you have any ideas? At this time, she could only ask her friend for help. There was a silent silence from the earpiece. Let's go find Chief Gordon and discuss it together. At this critical moment, Catwoman finally came up with a reasonable suggestion. In fact, she didn't have any ideas herself. This was a sign that she took the initiative to shift the blame. The others felt that this was a good idea and agreed. Things like having an elder at home was like having a treasure. They had to make use of the subjective initiative of an old comrade. These were all excuses for their lack of ideas. Wait here, I'll call him. The four heard the busy tone from the earpiece and knew that Felicity had gone to call for Gordon. However, they couldn't just stay here and do nothing. Miss Thea, are you interested in sparring with me? Bobla suggested excitedly. Their reactions were different. Catwoman had the mentality of watching a good show, Robin was a little worried about his girlfriend, and Thea was purely annoyed. She was ready to find a grass patch to sleep. After all, her schedule had been to sleep during the day and fight monsters at night. After being forced to come to Gotham, her biological clock hadn't adjusted yet. However, looking at Bobla's confident expression, she couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with her. If she used a weapon, she would definitely be bullying her. She threw away her bow and arrow and waved at her. Come on. Seeing that she threw away her bow and arrow, both Bobla and Robin, who were prepared to challenge her, secretly heaved a sigh of relief. It couldn't be helped. Thea's high-tech arrows were almost invincible against ordinary people. Not to mention them, even Miss Shiva would be at a disadvantage if she wasn't prepared. After all, this was an era of technology, not martial arts. However, as Catwoman who had fought countless times, she could only smile when she saw the relaxed expressions of her two teammates after Thea threw away her weapon, indicating that she would just watch quietly and not say anything. Since her opponent had given up such an advantageous weapon, Bobla also threw away her belt. No, it was the whip that was disguised as a belt. During the initial battle, Thea wasn't around and didn't see where she took out the whip. Thus, when she suddenly saw her opponent taking off her belt, she was shocked and almost shouted that she admitted defeat. In her heart, she felt that Thea was deliberately mystifying things. Couldn't you wrap the whip around your arm or your thigh? Wouldn't anything work? It would be too easy to create ambiguity if you tied it around your waist to hold a weapon. As a woman, she was already surprised. What if her opponent was a man? Or the kind that had been single for 50 years. Once he saw that you had a combat strength of 5 after taking off your belt, he would immediately transform into a werewolf. His combat strength would be over 100. Thinking about it, she felt that it was dangerous. She wanted to persuade her, "Lady, you have to respect yourself. The world of adults is still very dangerous." However, thinking that their friendship hadn't reached that level, she wouldn't listen even if she did, so she could only give up. When she realized that it was a false alarm, Thea's original tiredness was also scared away. She had originally planned to deal with it to kill time, but since Thea was so determined, she had no choice but to fulfill her wish since she had already taken off her belt. The two walked into the arena empty-handed and guarded against each other. No one wanted to make the first move. Bobla motioned for Thea to attack first, which made her feel a little amused. Thea was already inferior to me, and you're giving me the first move. I hope you won't lose too badly. Be careful. After giving a reminder, Thea attacked first. She used a Wing Chun fist technique to directly hit her opponent's face. Bobla used a judo technique in an attempt to grab her opponent's arm in preparation for the next throw. Chapter 66. However, Thea also knew judo, so how could she be caught so easily? Wing Chun was known for its tight defense. She spread her arms outwards, blocking Barbara's arms, and went straight for her middle. Although Barbara had never seen this kind of fighting style before, she reacted quickly and immediately changed to kickboxing. She used a series of intensive attacks to recover the situation. However, from the beginning of the fight, it became a one-sided fierce attack. Although the fight seemed intense, she did not have any advantage. The two had been fighting for less than a minute, and Xia had already roughly figured out her martial arts routine. It was a bit of an exaggeration to say that she was weak in close combat. She could see that she had put in a lot of effort to practice, but she was lacking in moves. She only used karate, judo, and kickboxing. These kinds of moves were really effective against ordinary people. However, Thea, who could fight with Madame Shiva for a while, was a little problematic. First of all, there was a problem with the moves. These moves would be very disadvantageous when used against enemies who were larger than oneself. Just like the killer crocodile just now, if you used a throwing technique, you would definitely die miserably. Regarding this point, Robin deeply understood. It was only because they were both women and had similar strength and physique that they were able to fight back and forth for a few rounds. Secondly, she did not have much experience in bare-handed fighting, and it consumed a lot of energy. Perhaps in the past, when she was using a whip, she did not need to move so frequently. However, now that she was facing Thea's strong attacks, she could only exhaust a lot of energy to avoid Thea's close combat and try to open up the distance between them. Lastly, and also the most important problem, she had never seen Wing Chun before. It was reasonable to say that Batman knew this style of fighting. After all, he was known to know 127 types of martial arts. Perhaps Old Master himself had a strong physique and did not like this kind of close combat style. Naturally, he would not use it normally. If he did not use it normally, Barbara would have never seen it before. In addition, she had too little experience in fighting. Originally, she could at least hold on for 5 minutes, but now, she could not hold on for more than a minute. If this was in the past, she would have been defeated directly. Xia in 1.0 wasn't a humble person, and the concept of this world was to use as much strength as possible. If you were merciful to your enemy would be merciless to you. However, the current situation was a little special. He was fighting in an away game, and his opponent was an ally. Most importantly, this ally's father was the leader of his own faction. If he made things too ugly for her, it would easily destroy the relationship between both sides. But he couldn't admit defeat. That would be too fake. He sighed in his heart that this opponent was too weak. He hadn't used many moves yet. In desperation, he could only give up the advantage of Wing Chun and change to karate. The two of them practiced slowly. When Robin first saw that his girlfriend was losing, he was extremely anxious. He wanted them to stop, but he knew that neither of them would listen. At least, the competitive Barbara wouldn't listen. Just as he was thinking about how to end the fight without hurting his girlfriend's face, he suddenly realized that Thea had changed her moves. He had never seen Wing Chun before, but he felt that her attacks were fierce and surging, making it hard for him to breathe. If he was in her position, he would most likely lose. As for the move she was using now, he understood. Isn't that karate? It seems like she's not familiar with it. His original hope for his girlfriend to win surfaced again. Maybe she can win. After all, if his wife wanted to live a good life after fighting with someone, anyone would support their wife. Thea didn't know that she gave others the illusion that she could win or counterattack. To be honest, she really didn't practice karate much, just like how Batman didn't practice Wing Chun. It wasn't that she didn't know how to do it, but it wasn't suitable for her. Now, in order to put on an act and stall for time, she had no choice but to use this set of moves. Other people's trump cards were all ultimate moves, but hers was purely because she wasn't familiar with it. Although Barbara didn't know why she changed her moves when she had a high chance of winning, she didn't think too much about it during the fight. She took a deep breath and didn't dare to advance rashly this time. Instead, she trained with Thea with a serious expression. As the fight dragged on, Thea's various unfamiliarity gradually disappeared, and her strong martial arts foundation burst forth. One had to know that she had been learning from Madame Shiva for the past few months. The two of them were fighting all the time. Sometimes, she even thought that Madame Shiva simply couldn't find a sparring partner and used the excuse of training her to kill time. It was common for her to have a bloody nose and a swollen face. However, as the saying goes, no pain, no gain. Thea's combat ability had improved tremendously. Although there were still various inconsistencies, with her rich combat experience, she could gradually control her rhythm. The amount of exercise now was almost the same as running for her. On the other hand, Barbara was still immersed in the fantasy that she could win. She didn't care about her defense at all and launched round after round of fierce attacks. However, under Thea's calm and unruffled response, her stamina was rapidly depleting. At this time, the few people in the arena saw the problem. Thea didn't fight with her properly at all. She was purely playing around because she had nothing better to do. Robin was anxious when he saw this. Catwoman didn't care. She had long seen that Thea couldn't take it anymore. For a moment, she even thought that Thea was giving them face. Huff, huff. With rapid breaths, Barbara finally realized the difference between the two of them. She was exhausted and sweating profusely, but Thea on the other side was like nothing had happened. Even a fool could see that Thea was going easy on her. She wanted to admit defeat, but she couldn't bring herself to say it. Since she couldn't admit defeat, she could only stall for time. At this moment, she was full of hope for Felicity. Hurry up and find my dad, then this fight will stop. At the same time, she was also thinking about where my dad had gone after fighting for almost 10 minutes. Don't tell me he's not in university. Worrying about her gains and losses, she lost even more of her fighting spirit. The original 9 attacks and 1 defense turned into 9 defenses and 1 attack. Sia also had the intention of admitting defeat or stalling for time, so she would not rush to attack. The two girls tacitly fought a defensive battle, and the scene could not even be described as ugly. It was as slow and light as 2 vegetative people fighting. They had neither strength nor speed. In the blink of an eye, they fought for another 10 minutes. Catwoman was already tired of watching, so she went to observe the ice by herself. Only Robin was still silently cheering for his girlfriend. He wasn't cheering for her because he would marry her if she won, but because she had to hold on. Barbara had used up too much of her stamina in the early stages. Although she had reduced her consumption later on, stamina was something that had been used up. There were a few people who were proficient in physical techniques who could maintain a balance between consumption and slow recovery, but Barbara was not one of them. She kept encouraging herself, telling herself that she couldn't admit defeat. Her father was coming, wasn't he? Hurry up and come. Hurry up and come back. Finally, she heard Felicity's voice in her earpiece. Hey, everyone, I've found the chief. Let's officially start. The voice in her earpiece sounded a little rushed. It could be heard that she had gone to a lot of places to find Chief Gordon. Chapter 67. With Director Gordon's arrival, this battle between women naturally came to an end. Barbara was able to announce that she hadn't lost in a relatively dignified manner. Even though everyone with eyes could see the truth, at the very least, she was able to retain her dignity. She didn't have the strength to chat with her father. She sat down on the ground. She would definitely die if she was hit for another minute. Although her family was not devout believers, the only thing that came to her mind at this moment was, God bless. She only felt that there was a supreme existence in an unknown time and space looking at her. With his attention, he was able to safely get through this awkward competition. He had a feeling that perhaps he should do something for him. Perhaps there was a mission there. Thea did not feel any sacred mission. She just felt that it was all an act. She wanted to shake hands with Barbara or say something along the lines of, "Thank you for letting me win." After every fight with Madame Shiva, both of them would still politely say, "Thank you," even though they were covered in wounds. But now, Bobla's original ladle-like sitting posture had turned into a sprawled on the ground. Her bright red hair looked as if it had been washed by water, sticking to her body in clumps. She gave up on this seemingly modest but actually mocking behavior. "Hey, are you guys listening?" Felicity, who was in the earpiece, asked again. The drone hovering in the sky had flown back after the battle with Killer Crocodile ended, so she didn't know that there was a harmonious and enthusiastic friendly match. "Yes, everyone is here." Usually, Bobla would be the one to show her face, but now she was as tired as a dead dog. Catwoman and Thea also did not have the intention to speak first. In the end, only the honest Robin could reply. "Oh," Felicity said, not understanding the meaning behind it. "Then, shall we begin?" Now, this Gotham version of the six-party meeting had officially begun. The topic of the meeting was definitely not the general framework of issues such as world peace. They were mainly discussing the adoption of single crocodiles. As the boss, Thea did not speak first, so she hinted to her number one henchman. Felicity immediately said that if they did not want this guy, they could directly bring him to Star City. The Quinn group had an applied science laboratory with all kinds of electric saws and drills. She believed that single crocodiles would like it there. Besides, they also had 1,500 workers at home. As long as they agreed, they did not need modern machines. They could carry this guy on their shoulders or roll a wooden rope. This was not a big deal. "You Gotham people, don't worry." At this time, Bobla caught her breath and expressed her firm opposition to this rude request. This guy ate and drank Gotham's food. Even if he died, he would have to die in Gotham's territory. If they had any urgent needs, they could share a bowl of soup with them after this, but it was impossible to take him away directly. Thea did not have any good ideas about this reply. In this world, the value of heroes was to fight their own monsters. Outsiders had no right to ask what equipment they dropped. Since they were so adamant about it, she could only say forget it. Anyway, she did not have much hope for this big guy. As for drawing his blood to be used as a strengthening agent, regardless of whether it would work or not, just looking at his appearance alone, she knew that there would be no end to it. Bobla was very satisfied with Thea and Felicity's retreat. To be honest, when she rejected them, she felt a little guilty. After all, they did not help much in the whole thing. Felicity was the one who started the scolding war. The two of them were just a repeater, and this job could be done by any two people. Perhaps they could even find two people with louder voices. The decisive blow had nothing to do with them. Although the two of them were in a difficult situation, they really did not contribute much. Now that she heard them agree to Gotham's ownership of Killer Croc, she felt as if she had won a big battle. Her impression of the two of them improved slightly. "Dad, do you have any ideas?" Bobla did not want to pay any attention to this big ice cube. As long as he was still in Gotham, they could throw him anywhere. She just wanted to go back to take a bath and have a good sleep. Initially, Gordon really did not have any ideas. He was a police officer and had been in the police force for a lifetime. He did not even have the time to care about his wife, let alone other chores. Moving things like this was obviously better for construction workers. However, the 1,500 people that Felicity mentioned just now made him think of a stupid idea. There were many people in Gotham, so he had no choice but to use manpower to move him. Since there were so many idle people in the school, he could get a few hundred people to move him. It was better to have a solution than not having one. Director Gordon found more than 100 people. Sia controlled the skateboard and pulled it from the sky. The rest of the people were busy with the round wooden rope. Finally, they pulled the heavy block of ice from the lake to the main road. It took them a lot of effort to load it into the car. An hour later, they finally returned to the university safely. "Mom, what is this?" "It's probably a Christmas present," the big ice cube caused quite a commotion when it was moved into the school. Many of the children had never seen such a rare thing before. They ran around and asked their families about it. Their families explained it blindly, saying that it was a weapon of mass destruction, or that the commissioner wanted to treat everyone to shaved ice. In short, no one could tell that there was a single croc hiding in the ice cube. After the mission was completed, everyone disbanded. Thea and Babla wanted to go back to sleep. Of course, they slept separately. Robin went to the bathroom to take a bath. Catwoman pulled Felicity to a corner and whispered, "Do you have any equipment that can identify the authenticity of an artwork?" "What are you doing?" Felicity looked dumb, but she was not stupid at all. Catwoman laughed. "I'm going to borrow a few pieces of art. Gotham's jewelry industry has been facing a winter. No one dares to bring jewelry out. The art market is in high demand now." Catwoman was envious of Thea's skateboard. Although she was rich, she spent a lot of money helping the poor from time to time. No matter how rich Bruce was, it had nothing to do with her. After all, she was still fighting with Talia for the naming rights of Wayne. When she saw Talia carrying her child and aggressively rushing into Gotham, she felt that the family name was getting further and further away from her. Since it would take time to change her name from Selina Kyle to Selina Wayne, she planned to rely on herself. With money, everything would be easy. When the time came, she could buy it directly from Thea or ask Bruce to make it for her. Coincidentally, the city was in a state of panic. The rich people in the upper city hid in their homes and did not dare to go out. The market demand suddenly became stagnant, and her previous jewelry business was inevitably hit hard. This forced her to target the art market, which she was not good at in the past. Chapter 68. As a former famous hacker, Felicity has just turned over a new leaf, and she does not have a strong sense of justice as she did in the future. Although she knows that the Catgirl is definitely not borrowed, and it must be illegal, she is not a hacker who follows the law. "Why didn't you mention it to Thea?" Felicity couldn't help but ask. "Why me? I don't think I'm that close to you. You two seem to be closer, right?" Catwoman was now full of admiration for the duo from Star City. She always felt that they could come up with something magical without even realizing it. This was different from Batman's research route. Compared to the old master's planes and cannons, the two girls' research was more suitable for her. She now looked at them with envy and anticipation, just like how Big Xiong looked at Doraemon. As for Felicity's question, she was also thinking in her heart. Why didn't she mention it to Thea, who was closer to her? She thought for a moment. Maybe it's because of her identity. I always feel that she won't agree with my actions. I think we're very similar, so you should be able to help me. What did she mean? After listening to Catwoman's words, Felicity was a little speechless. Did she mean that she was like a bad person, or was she like a poor person? Did you think that Thea was a good person? Were you fooled by her little white flower disguise? In fact, Catwoman's vision was quite accurate. Thea had a lot of scruples because of her family, and she wouldn't easily trample on the law. At least, she wouldn't break the law unless it was a matter of life and death. According to the game's classification, she was at least in the lawful camp. As for whether she was lawful or neutral, it was still unknown. Felicity didn't have this problem. She had enough to eat and her family wasn't hungry. She was also very adventurous, otherwise, she wouldn't have volunteered to come to this place. Okay, this is for you. I don't know anything else. She opened the tablet and connected it to a mobile phone. She quickly operated it, then handed the phone to Catwoman and walked away briskly. Catwoman took the phone and found that there was only one application called Art Identification 2-inch. She clicked on the application. It was a very simple program. As long as you scanned the art, you could determine the age of the object and the production process. The database of the software was extremely large. Even the collections of Malaysia were included. Although she couldn't directly provide a proof of authenticity, this was enough. Catwoman didn't have any requirements for artwork, as long as it matched the era. Ha! Catwoman felt that Felicity wasn't being honest. If she was a good person, why would she prepare this software for no reason? It was obvious that she had written it long ago and just hadn't used it. This was a great help to him. When he thought about how his career could take off, he didn't pay much attention to Master Bruce being imprisoned. That night, Robin and Barbara had rested enough and went out to capture a criminal with a name. This person was called the Electric Torturer. It was said that it was a craft passed down from their ancestors. No one knew which generation of the Electric Torturers he was. However, Theo looked at the serious-looking middle-aged man and thought that he was a joke hired by someone. This person was extremely stupid. He carried a battery from an electric scooter on his back. It was unknown whether it was hydrogen or lithium. He connected 2 wires to a pair of gloves and electrocuted whoever he caught. It seemed very impressive, and it was very effective against ordinary people. However, the smart Chief Gordon had discovered a fatal flaw in their craft 30 years ago. It was afraid of water. You didn't even need to prepare anything. Just walk 3 meters away, open a bottle of my dong, and pour it on the person's face. This guy would be silenced. What kind of F***king technology was this? They didn't pursue innovation. Instead, they stuck to tradition for 30 years and passed down this stupid thing to their descendants. They even went against the Gotham police station. It could only be said that there was something wrong with this family's brains. Thea shook her head and didn't look at the serious-looking electric torturer anymore. She was afraid that she would laugh and affect her ladylike demeanor. She lowered her head and finished the black base and cheeseburger on her plate. Just when she thought that her days would continue like this, and when Master Batman returned home, she would completely retire to the second line. She could go home after robbing a windfall when no one was paying attention. However, someone came to talk to her. "Miss Quinn, the chief wants to see you in the meeting room." A police officer whose name Thea didn't know said to her. "Oh, okay." Why was he looking for her? Thea didn't understand. Could it be that Batman was back? However, she quickly shook her head. He wouldn't be back so soon. It would take a day for him to recover from his injuries. His spine was also broken. Even if he came out, he wouldn't be able to recover that quickly. She pushed the door open and entered the meeting room. Felicity, Robin, and Catwoman weren't there. Only Chief Gordon and Barbara were talking to a woman in black. "Thea, let me introduce you. This is Laura Michaels, a senior investigator of the Advanced Superhuman Joint Research Team. She's here for Killer Croc." Chief Gordon gave a simple introduction. "Oh, isn't this the Heaven's Eye Society? This woman is Laura, the future wife of John Diggle. She didn't have a wedding ring on her hand. Does this mean that they aren't together yet?" Theo looked at her face. She could be considered a character from the Green Arrow. She didn't expect that their first meeting would be in Gotham. "Nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you." The 2 women shook hands gently. It could be seen that Laura was still a little immature. She didn't look like a middle-aged woman with a dissatisfied face. She could barely be considered a mature woman now. Laura was also secretly observing the young man in front of her. She was ordered to take Killer Croc away this time. It was purely a coincidence that she met Thea. However, after learning more about her past, she made the decision to get in touch with her. "Miss Quinn, I saw Killer Croc's frozen body just now. May I ask, how many days will it take for him to thaw under natural conditions?" "Why this question?" Thea turned around and asked Chief Gordon. "I'm going to sleep. Didn't Felicity tell you?" Chief Gordon shook his head helplessly. He really forgot to ask. When he remembered, he couldn't find her. Laura asked him a few questions just now, but he didn't know anything. When he heard that Thea was eating, he quickly called her over after getting Lara's permission. Thea slapped her forehead. This muddle-headed guy really brought shame to Star City. She quickly coughed and said, "Ahem, in theory, under normal conditions, it will thaw after 3 days. This has nothing to do with the species of the body. Whether it's a giant or a dwarf, it will take 3 days. If it needs to regain consciousness, it will take 15 to 30 days for a normal person to regain their nerve activity. However, I haven't drawn blood from this guy before, so I can't say for sure. But it will take at least 5 days." When they heard that Killer Croc wouldn't be able to jump out of the ice immediately, Chief Gordon and Barbara were obviously relieved. Laura, on the other hand, nodded like a general. Chapter 69. Laura looked at Thea, who was speaking confidently, with a hint of curiosity in her eyes. The Sky's Eye Society had been paying attention to Gotham and Batman for a long time. As a billionaire, Batman had always been the target of their secret government organization. He was a pure earthling, with brains and methods, as well as money. At the same time, he benefited from the current system and was a natural collaborator with the government. His abilities were reflected in technological weapons, and he was usually a normal person, not uncontrollable like a mutant. Although the experts in the organization were very worried about Batman's mental state, they all wondered why this person had not gone crazy. In other words, this person could go crazy at any time, and it was up to them. In the end, after careful consideration, Amanda Waller, as one of the leaders of the organization, made the decision to maintain contact. This time, when they heard that Batman had disappeared and Gotham was in chaos, they did help him in his hour of need and made some investments in the future to rope him in. As for the killer crocodile, it was just a matter of convenience. If there were any, they would pull them away. If there were none, it would not affect the overall situation. However, when they understood the process of capturing the killer crocodile, they found out that there was someone among the participants who helped them in their hour of need. Thea's name naturally entered the Sky's Eye Society's attention. Although she covered it up quite well, it was still possible to find out where she came from. Moreover, for such a huge national organization, they could use all kinds of servers and look at the information of every organization. They might not be at Felicity's level, but they could easily pull out 5 or 6 hackers who were slightly worse than her, and easily found out her true identity. When the information was gathered to Amanda, she was also a little stunned. In this day and age, the only billionaire superhero was Batman. She did not expect another one to appear today, and it was a woman. This made Amanda, who was also a woman, inadvertently feel some recognition. She immediately raised the original mission level and sent her assistant, Laura, to Gotham to find out the latest information and gave the order to make initial contact. "Miss Quinn, can you bring me to see the captured target?" At this time, Laura had just taken off her military uniform and walked into the government office. Her expression was more stern than gentle, and those who did not know her would think that she was putting on airs. "Of course, you can also call me Thea." Actually, looking at the target was just an excuse. He just wanted to send away the miscellaneous people and find a place where he could talk smoothly. Director Gordon was old and shrewd, so he could still understand. He grabbed Barbara, who still wanted to go in, and disappeared after saying goodbye. "I heard from Director Gordon that it was your idea to encourage the citizens to participate in the war. What did you think? Don't you think that a lot of civilians will die?" Lara's words were blunt, and even sounded like she was questioning him. However, Thea understood the nature of a soldier. The most important thing in the army was to fight together. In a war, everyone was a participant. It couldn't be said that fighting a war was the responsibility of the general, and the soldiers didn't care about it. Heroism was a taboo in the military. Even though Captain America was so powerful, he could only lead a small team to do bombings and assassinations. He was only given the rank of captain after he was suspected to have sacrificed himself. There will definitely be sacrifices, but the necessary sacrifices will allow more people to live and the city to restore order sooner. I think it's worth it. Thea hesitated for a moment, but she still revealed part of her true thoughts. The part that she didn't say was that it was none of her business whether these people lived or died. There might be good people in this city, but there really weren't many. The sooner the war was over, the sooner they could leave. Her answer didn't surprise Laura. On the contrary, it was very much what she wanted. As a government official, she didn't like superheroes. This group of people relied on their powerful abilities and basically didn't care about the government. Those who were calm would say a few words, and those who were bad would pretend to be deaf and mute. What if Batman doesn't agree with this method after he returns? Lara's question was even sharper. After all, Thea was an outsider. Gotham couldn't do anything without Batman. Now that the tiger wasn't home, she could do whatever she wanted, but what about when he came back? Thea really didn't think about this problem. Her original intention was to wait for her master to come back and then retreat. No matter how many people died, it had nothing to do with her. With Batman watching every day, how many people died? The policy of this city had to be changed, or the death rate would remain high. However, if she said this directly, it would make it seem like Batman didn't have a plan. Thea still wanted to maintain her image of being humble and cautious. If we can do something, I don't think he'll object. If there aren't any major problems during this period, the chaos in the city will be settled in a month. If it's not settled, it has nothing to do with me. Thea was prepared to retreat when the war was about to end. She had already told Felicity to focus on a few rich fugitives, such as Penguin. As long as they were alone, he. The two chatted as they walked, occasionally discussing their views on the current situation. Laura came with a mission, and Thea knew that this person would become the leader of the Heaven's Eye Society in the future. Furthermore, she was husband and wife with Diggle, and Diggle was good friends with Oliver. She really wasn't an outsider. As the two talked, their relationship gradually became closer. Thea told a few jokes that were suitable for the situation here, and it made her laugh. Laura also talked about her military life. When she mentioned missiles, Thea listened carefully for a long time and felt that missiles were more and more difficult to obtain. The military's management was too strict. Was she going to stay at the archery stage? Before Laura left, she said that she would stay in Gotham for a while, and hoped to talk again next time. Laura slowly walked into the car, and her expression changed from relaxed to serious. She connected the long-distance call. Amanda, the initial contact with the target has been completed. It's more optimistic than we expected. Oh, tell me more about it. The black woman in the camera, Amanda, showed a hint of curiosity. From the conversation, I can tell that she's very mature and has a lot of ideas. The most interesting thing is that her position is close to that of an anti-hero. She's against individual heroism, and she actually encouraged the citizens of Gotham to stand up against the thugs. I don't know if you've seen the pictures I sent you, but they've already set up a quarantine zone in the city. As Laura spoke, the serious expression on her face disappeared, and it was replaced by a teasing look. When Batman comes back, his expression will be very good to see. Amanda didn't say much, and she just nodded lightly. She changed the topic. What's Killer Croc trapped by? Do you know anything about it? The accompanying expert said that it's liquid nitrogen. I didn't expect her to use it as a weapon. To be honest, our experts are very impressed. The experts were more than impressed. They had already written a report to their superiors, and in the future, each person in the field would carry a few rounds. This thing was safe and environmentally friendly, and it was perfect for dealing with enemies of flesh and blood. Chapter 70. Thea was not surprised that she had caught the attention of the Heaven's Eye Society. It was only a matter of time. She was useful to them, and in turn, they could help her. Whether it was her mother's election or her own technological weapon, she needed a lot of connections. To put it in a more utilitarian way, she could become a hero and help her mother with the election. This was like handing over a hostage. As long as her mother was still working in the government, she could not do anything antisocial. At the same time, her heroic deeds would also give her mother more points, at least in the eyes of the country's upper echelons. After thinking about it, she realized that she did not say anything wrong and did not leave anything out. Relieved, she went to chat with Felicity. "Hey, Felicity, have you seen Catwoman in the past few days?" It had been 3 days since Lila transported the killer crocodile. Thea participated in a monster hunting activity organized by Bobla. The process could be described as uneventful. She used entanglement arrows to catch 15 lunatics who escaped from the mental hospital. In fact, these lunatics were quite happy. Each of them charged fearlessly into the spider web. It was as if they were there to die. After the mission, Thea was bored. It was a little awkward to go out alone, so she wanted to find a companion. Felicity was too weak and the city was too dangerous for her, so she thought of Catwoman. However, after looking around, she realized that Catwoman was nowhere to be found. No one had seen her in the past few days. That was why she asked the higher-ups. Catwoman. I don't know where she is either," Felicity said vaguely, shaking her head to emphasize the truth of her words. Something was wrong. Thea did not say anything. She only looked into Felicity's eyes. Felicity's eyes darted around and she muttered something, but she did not say anything about Catwoman's whereabouts. "You guys are quite loyal." Thea was too lazy to question them further. Anyway, it was impossible for the two of them to secretly side with Bane. Although the world was changing fast, it wasn't that fast. "Let's go to your room and drink." Felicity heaved a sigh of relief when Thea stopped asking. "Drink? Who's afraid of who? Come on." The two of them carried a few bottles of Gotham beer to Felicity's house. When they arrived at Gotham, Thea found out that Felicity had installed many games on her computer. Looking at the date of installation, it was when they came to Gotham to prepare their equipment. She was really not afraid at all. Did she think that they were here for a vacation? In fact, the two of them were here for a vacation. They were not the ones who were fighting at the front lines. Chief Gordon was so busy every day that his feet barely touched the ground. He had gradually recovered 1/3 of the city. As more and more police officers and ordinary citizens joined in, the recovery of the city was progressing like a rolling snowball. It was believed that this incident would be completely resolved in less than a month. The two of them were bored to death. Thea wanted to practice martial arts, but when she found someone, she realized that she was invincible in Gotham. Barbara would avoid her whenever she saw her. The cat girl's whereabouts were unknown, and Robin adhered to the sex rule of not fighting with women. He wouldn't do anything no matter what she said. As a result, Sia could only play games and drink to get by. Actually, she was also suffering in her heart. Perhaps, the two of them played until they were drunk and fell asleep unknowingly. Kill them all. Are you in pain? Are you afraid? My dear, save me, who's talking? What am I doing? Sia felt that there were many figures floating in front of her. Some she knew, some she didn't. A few of them seemed to be her friends from her previous life. Just as she was trying to recall, 2 more figures covered in blood walked past her. They were her mother and Malcolm. Why are they here? This is too strange. What's wrong with me? She shook her head hard. Her mother and Malcolm's shadows turned into old Robert and Oliver. Their faces were also covered in blood. Their bodies were slightly swollen, as if they had been soaked in water for a long time. Why is Oliver here? He can't be here. This is too illogical. I haven't even gone to look for him, and he's already here. What a joke. Thea finally realized that there was something wrong with her. She tried to use the breathing technique taught by Madame Shiva to calm herself down and adjust her thoughts. However, there was little effect. This made her confused again. It didn't seem to be her own problem. Even if she closed her eyes, she could still feel something floating past her. Did I meet a ghost? Where am I? I seem to remember being in Gotham. What am I doing in Gotham? She tried to recall. As her memory slowly recovered, her body gradually regained some mobility. Thea stumbled to her feet. She looked at her surroundings and the woman on the ground. Her focus was a little messy. This woman is Felicity. Something happened to her too. She could smell a pungent smell in her nose. It was a mixture of musk and some chemicals. However, Thea didn't have the time to care about this. She felt that as she inhaled the pungent gas, she was hallucinating again. It was as if there were a bunch of people fighting in her mind. She was in a daze, but subconsciously, she knew that she couldn't stay here for too long. The more gas she absorbed, the stronger the hallucinations would be. She opened her backpack and carried all her equipment on her back. She tied Felicity to one side of the skateboard and slowly climbed to the other side. She fixed her body and silently chanted to fly up. The skateboard shot out of the door like an arrow, silently hovering in the air 300 meters above the ground. It seems that the effect of the mysterious gas is concentrated on the ground. Being blown by the cool wind in the sky, Sia gradually regains some consciousness. She finds that it is dark all around, and the moon is nowhere to be seen. She can only feel the thick dark clouds pressing down on the ground. Is it already night? While no one was paying attention to her, Thea hurriedly drove the skateboard away from the area. When she couldn't smell the gas anymore, she lowered her altitude and found a house. She barged in without knocking. She looked around the house. It was empty. She found some cold water to wash her face. She felt lucky. She didn't know if something had happened to the others, but she knew that she had barely escaped. She turned around to take care of Felicity. The girl was lying on the skateboard, sweating profusely, as if she was having a nightmare. She kept murmuring, "Don't go." Sia wiped her face with a towel, but after 2 minutes, she felt that the skin on her face was about to break, but she didn't wake up. Looking at her red face, Lin Xianxia knew that it wasn't because of shyness, but because the capillaries on her face had ruptured. Thea was a little embarrassed. It seemed that the gas was quite high-end. The traditional method of pouring cold water didn't work. Was she going to have to find an antidote? Lin Xianxia stretched her body. Although she wasn't at her peak, she had recovered about 80%. She still had to go back. Whether it was to find an antidote or to save her companions, she had to go back. This time, she had more time. She changed her clothes, put on her glasses, and carried her bow. To prevent the damn gas, she even put on 3 layers of masks. She didn't know if they were effective or if they would come in contact with her skin, but she covered herself up tightly. She opened the door and jumped on the skateboard. Chapter 71. The cold wind and the high altitude of the night was like a knife, causing Sia's exposed skin to ache faintly. But at this time, she was no longer in the mood to pay attention to this. She still had not figured out who was behind tonight's incident. Could she find the antidote to save Felicity? Were Batman's teammates also trapped in the school? She had no idea where Director Gordon was. So many questions gathered together that her beautiful eyebrows furrowed. At the same time, she swore to herself that no matter who started this incident, she would kill that person. Returning to the sky above the school, she could see that the entire area was shrouded in a layer of light green gas under the faint moonlight. The lively place a few days ago now gave off a feeling of dead silence and gloom. Thea lowered her altitude and observed carefully. With the faint light, she could see a few burly men patrolling the camp from time to time with automatic weapons. They seemed to be wearing gas masks. That means the poison gas is spread through the respiratory system. Thea remembered the movements of these people and was ready to snatch two of them when they retreated. The skateboard flew over their heads silently and was not noticed by the patrolling soldiers. Many people had this problem. A normal person's line of sight was 120 degrees in front of them. People without the Byakugan Sharingan would not look above their heads for no reason. In the movies, the secret agents hiding on the ceiling were similar to how Thea flew over their heads under the cover of the night. Thea did not spend too much time on the periphery and went straight to the brightest room. This time, she was very careful. She controlled the skateboard and gently floated into the room. It seemed to be a lecture hall. Thea instantly saw Chief Gordon, who had white hair and was wearing a khaki coat, in front of the classroom. The red-haired woman next to him seemed to be Barbara. The two of them were unconscious and tied to chairs back to back. Perhaps they did not realize that someone had escaped and then came back. The security was very lax. There were only two guards, one in the north and one in the south. The guard near Thea was cursing from time to time, and the guard a little further away was dozing off. Looking around, Thea did not find any ambush. She did not act rashly. She slowly exited the room, preparing to find the others first before rescuing them together. Not long after, she found Robin in the crowd. The young man had lost his usual vigor and was lying on the grass with a group of townsfolk. Although he was in a deep sleep, his face showed signs of shock from time to time. After circling around the camp, Thea was a little confused. Where did Catwoman go? Was she not at the camp? Let's hope she's blessed by the heavens. After counting the number of people, Catwoman wasn't around. Gordon and his daughter, Robin, and himself, the four of them could barely stay within the weight-bearing range of the skateboard. If there was another person, it would be hard to say if they could fly. Just as she was about to go back to rescue Gordon and his daughter and then come out to rescue Robin, she found an unexpected figure in the crowd. Why is she here? Lara's appearance put Thea in a difficult position. She had to rescue this person, but having one more target did not mean that she could take away all of the skateboards. She could only give up one target and take away the remaining three. Who should she choose? Thea felt that it was a little difficult for her to make a choice. They were all acquaintances, so she should rescue all of them. However, reality was cruel. She could only choose to give up on someone. There were no guards around Lara and Robin. Presumably, both of them were wearing civilian clothes and were not conspicuous. They were placed in the crowd as ordinary townsfolk. These two people could be said to be the easiest to save. What if she transported them out first and then came back? This idea was very tempting, but Thea quickly gave up on it. She had not been discovered the first time she came in, and the second time she came in without being discovered. It was impossible for her to be so lucky every time. She was only using the cover of the night and was not invisible. This went back to the original question. Who should she give up on? Chief Gordon was currently the golden calf, so she had to rescue him. Although his combat ability was weak, his position as chief was too important. With his presence, she could gather the remaining police forces in the city. Previously, according to the plan, he had already recovered 1/3 of the city. Many police officers had been scattered and were not gathered in the campus. As long as he raised the flag, he could quickly gather many police officers to help. The next one was Lara. As Amanda's deputy and the future leader of the Sky's Eye Society, she had to be rescued. Like the old chief, she was also the type of person who was weak in combat but had a strong appeal. Through her, she could get a lot of support from the Sky's Eye Society. This was very important for her, who had not found the mastermind behind the scenes. Besides, he didn't want to offend Amanda, who had black hair, black eyes, and skin that wasn't too dark. She was ruthless and held a high position. If he wanted to continue working here, he would have to suck up to her a little. Rescuing her assistant would be considered a great achievement. Who should she give the remaining spot to? Although Thea did not like Barbara from the bottom of her heart, she still decided to give up on Robin. After all, a lone girl with a 70 out of 100 appearance was too dangerous in this kind of environment. Although foreigners did not care about that, there were so many perverts in Gotham. Who knew what would happen to her? Robin had thick eyebrows, big eyes, and a thin body. To be honest, his appearance, figure, knowledge, and speech did not fit the aesthetic standards of this place. It was really a miracle that Barbara would fall for him. Presumably, no perverted girl would fall for him. She hoped that he could keep his thing. Actually, even if he could not keep it, she would not lose anything. She silently wished Robin the best. Take care. It's not that I don't want to save you, but there's no more space on the bus. While the patrolling guards were far away, Thea quickly tied Lara to the side of the skateboard and turned around to save Gordon and his daughter. When she returned to the lecture hall, the two guards were still in their original positions. Thea got off the skateboard and used the Assassin League stealth techniques that old Ma taught her to slowly approach them. Their walkie-talkies were very close to their hands. If she did not incapacitate them immediately, she would be exposed. After thinking about it, she gave up on the idea of cutting their throats. Firstly, she was afraid that she would be covered in blood. Secondly, stealth was not that awesome. She only used the visual difference in light and darkness. This was not stealth, so it was impossible for her to walk up to them without them noticing. Thea walked to a dark corner and found a good angle. She did not use the high-tech arrowheads. Instead, she took out the arrowheads with anesthetic. The dosage of each arrowhead was enough to knock out an elephant. She aimed at the guard who had his back facing her and was still talking non-stop. Whoosh! The arrow flew past. The guard felt a chill on his neck. He did not say anything and slowly fell to the ground. Before he fell asleep, he saw a blurry figure behind him. He wanted to warn his companion, but his mouth was completely out of control. His fall alerted the guard who was dozing off not far away. Before he could understand the situation, he saw a white light gradually expand in his eyes. Although he tried his best to dodge, he was still stabbed in the shoulder. After a moment of numbness, he lost consciousness. Chapter 72. After killing the guards with 2 arrows, Thea immediately walked to the 2 of them and pulled off their gas masks. She could feel that she was affected by the gas again. She could only use about 60% of her strength now. He picked up the gas masks and looked at them. Even though he knew that wearing them would prevent the poisonous gas from entering his body, he still felt a little disgusted when he thought about how they were taken from their faces. He wanted to end this quickly, so he didn't wear them. He put the 2 masks into his backpack and took them back for testing. Maybe he could find the composition of the poisonous gas. She couldn't stay here for too long. Thea walked to the chair where Gordon and Bobla were sitting. These people seemed to know that he was an important person. They tied the old director and Bobla up tightly with a big chain. She couldn't open the door with her small arms and legs. She searched the 2 guards but couldn't find the key. Time waits for no one. Thea didn't know if there were any surveillance cameras in the room. She controlled the skateboard to float over and pulled out a chain from the outside. This thing was originally used for emergencies. The chain could bear 500 kilograms of weight. She apologized to the old director in her heart. She took the chain that came with the skateboard and tied it around the chair twice. She then connected it to the original chain on their bodies. The messy way of tying them made them look even more artistic. From afar, they looked like dumplings. She controlled the skateboard to drag Gordon and Bobla out of the door slowly. Thea pushed from behind. The space on the skateboard was too small. Besides, Lila was already tied up. There was no place for the father and daughter. Referring to Brother Asen's glorious deeds, there were no more seats in the car. The two of them could just take the ticket. Since they were unconscious, they probably wouldn't mind. The door frame was too low. She could float out with the skateboard close to the ground. However, she couldn't bring these people with her. She didn't want to make too much noise. It was best to come and go quietly. She might have a chance to save Robin. But Murphy's Law was magical. When you hoped that something would not be discovered, there would be countless onlookers. Hurry up, hurry up. Someone broke in. Before Thea reached the door, she heard the footsteps of more than 10 people. It seemed like there were surveillance cameras in this place. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to be so fast. Without any hesitation, he jumped onto the skateboard. Without caring about whether Gordon and his daughter would be injured, he rushed out of the door at full speed. In this distance of less than 30 meters, sounds of bang, dong, and bang could be heard from time to time. Just like how Mongolian nobles executed criminals in the past, Sia dragged the two of them out of the room without a care in the world. Then, under the surprised eyes of several guards who rushed over after hearing the news, she soared into the sky with a whoosh. From time to time, gunshots could be heard from below. Bang! Bang! At this time, Thea had already leaped to a height of 300 meters. Of course, she could continue to pull up. With her fear of death and the performance of the skateboard, she could go up to 500 meters. However, she was afraid that the two people who were sitting on the ticket would not be able to hold on. She had an antiviral suit, but they did not. She glanced sideways at Laura. The mature woman seemed to be uncomfortable and twisted from time to time. She was very kind to Amanda. This was considered first-class treatment for her assistant. Compared to the two people below, the word miserable could not describe it. At this time, Gordon and his daughter's faces were covered in blood. At first, Thea was shocked, but she quickly realized that this was not caused by the high-altitude air pressure. Barbara's forehead was swollen, and one of Gordon's leather shoes had fallen off, revealing a half-new and half-old sock. This was the plight of a single old man. Thea cursed Barbara in her heart for being unfilial to her father. She did not buy him a pair of socks. Instead, she fooled around with Robin every day. Poor old Gordon, who raised you with so much effort. After dodging a rocket, Thea knew that she could not save Robin. The searchlights below had been set up. At a glance, there were 30 to 40 people, all armed. However, they did not have any experience in aerial combat, so they could only shoot at the sky with their guns. Sigh. Thea sighed. They could not kill their way up, and she could not go down. She could only wish that Robin would be able to survive until she and the others came to save him. Thea brought them back to their temporary residence and found that Felicity was still unconscious. The antidote was still far away. Just as Thea was about to go back and capture them alive for interrogation, Laura slowly woke up. Who captured me? What's your purpose? I won't say anything. Laura stuttered as she tried to stand up. However, she failed every time she tried. She was the first person other than herself to wake up. Did this mean that she could recover on her own without the antidote? She was able to wake up because of her special agent training. She drank coffee and anesthetic every day, which raised her poison resistance to an inhuman level. How did she wake up? Did she rely on her strong willpower and abundant stamina? Thea was not sure, but she still grabbed Lara's shoulders. Look carefully. I'm Thea Quinn. We met 2 days ago. You were attacked by the poison gas. This is the room I found. She did not know if Lara heard her clearly. She could see that Lara was adjusting her focus, trying to see the face of the person in front of her. Thea did not have any antidote on hand. Even if she did, she would not dare to use it recklessly. She could only use the old method, which was to get a basin of cold water and wipe Lara's face with a towel. Perhaps Thea was not used to taking care of people, or perhaps Lara was not used to being passive. She weakly pushed Thea away, took a deep breath, and plunged into the basin. It had to be said that her movements were clean and neat, and she really had the bearing of a female soldier. If it weren't for the fact that she was facing Xia, she would have applauded her. This person exuded a valiant aura, and it was a stark contrast to the haggard middle-aged woman with a face full of unfulfilled desires. Time really was a butcher's knife. With a splash, Lila raised her head abruptly, wiped the water off her face, and glared at Xia fiercely. After a while, her brain finally reacted. The person in front of her didn't seem to be an enemy. "You're Thea. Where am I? Where are the others? Where are my men?" Although she knew this person, she did not know if there was a conspiracy. She remained vigilant, ready to attack at any time. It seemed that she did not hear what she said just now. Thea sighed and told her what happened. "That's what happened. There are only a few people here, and they are all unconscious. Only you and I are awake. When I pulled you back, I did not see your men. Of course, even if I saw them, I wouldn't recognize them." Chapter 73. Lila did not have the energy to care about Felicia's joke. Even though she could only see two figures in front of her, she still forced herself to stand up and lean against the wall while looking around. It was a very ordinary house. The furniture was old and broken, and there were some miscellaneous items scattered on the ground. Perhaps the owner had left in a hurry, but after a long observation, Lila realized that this place was very ordinary and did not look like a prison. The dark night outside the window also showed that this was not a prison cell. Lila's worries were mostly relieved. "If you can still walk, follow me outside to take a look. They've been unconscious all this time. I really can't do anything about it." Xia was exhausted after saying those few words. She had entered the poisonous gas area twice in a row, and both times she had engaged in intense fighting and killing. Her intake per unit of time was much higher than the rest of them who had fainted and fallen to the ground. She was barely holding on with her strong willpower. Lila naturally saw Felicia's pale face and sweaty forehead. She endured the discomfort in her body silently. As a former soldier and now a high-level agent, she could not say that her legs were as weak as noodles. If she was compared to a 16-year-old girl, she would be ashamed of the days when she drank anesthetics like coffee. However, she did not have the energy to speak. She just nodded and followed Thea to another bedroom. This room was basically the same as the one she was in, but it was bigger. There was a woman lying on the bed in the room. Lila had never seen Thea in person before. She had only seen her picture, which was attached to Thea's profile. At first, she did not recognize the woman who had taken off her glasses and had a red face. However, she soon realized that she was Thea's partner. As for her name, she could not remember. The other two people in the room were not treated so well. Their clothes were ragged and their faces were swollen. Looking at their miserable appearance, Lara unconsciously touched her own face. She couldn't help but think, "Am I like this too?" Although she looked average, she did not want to be disfigured. She felt that there was nothing wrong with her face, so she began to carefully examine the two. Of the two, Lara recognized Captain Gordon immediately because his outfit was too old-fashioned. He was wearing a beige coat that had not changed for decades. Even though the journey had been a bumpy one, his trademark glasses were still on his face. He was the only person in the whole of Gotham who was so unique and dressed so superbly in the 21st century. From time to time, a few illusory figures would appear in front of Lara's eyes. Some of them were her family members, and some were her former comrades. She knew that this was her hallucination. She shook her head hard and vaguely saw two people tied together. She thought to herself that the red-haired woman beside the old director should be his daughter. She couldn't possibly be the old director's lover who was caught and tied up. Do you have any idea how to wake them up? Thea asked when she saw that Lila had been in the room for a long time. What can I do? Lila did not force herself. She leaned against the wall and slowly sat on the ground. She used to be a soldier, and her current job was more of an administrative one. She did not know how to answer such a professional question. Moreover, her mind was sometimes clear and sometimes confused. Even if she knew, she could not remember. I don't have any idea. Hey, that's not right. Didn't you wake me up? No, you woke up on your own. Thea stopped shaking her head. The more she shook, the more dizzy she felt. She waved her hand at Lila. Although she did a lot of good deeds and did not leave her name, she was not the one who did it this time. Who knows how she woke up? Then how did you wake up? Lila was now in the mood to get to the bottom of it. Thea vaguely felt that her strong spiritual power had played a role. At the same time, her physique had also reached a higher level. After all, she had trained hard for the past year. With the help of her body and spiritual power, she was not completely knocked out by the poisonous gas. However, it was too troublesome to explain, so she could only continue to say that she did not know. The two of them did not talk about any practical solutions to the problem at hand. Theo looked at the few people who were as dizzy as dead pigs and did not know what to do. She was a little depressed. Since the two of them did not have any ideas, they could only ask for help from outsiders. Although Thea did not know many people, Lila was a senior figure in a government organization. Can you find some people to help? In fact, she did not need to ask Lila to think of this problem. She took off her military uniform and joined the Secret Service organization. Why did she work so hard to climb to a high position? Wasn't it so that the organization could give her a hand at this critical moment? Although this organization was particular about abandoning people at the drop of a hat, and the human feelings had dropped to the negatives, he was still the leader's deputy and was considered a high-ranking member. If he didn't even save someone of his rank, then he should just disband. She did not hide it from Thea. She took out her phone and started to communicate with the person on the other end of the line. The password was a combination of a lot of numbers and letters. The password was different every day, so she was not afraid that Thea would hear any secrets. In fact, it was not easy to be a Secret Service agent, especially a senior member like her. Every morning, when she received the day's secret communication order, she had to memorize it for half a day. Then, she would forget it at night because the order would be changed the next day. If she remembered a letter wrong, then there would be a big joke. Naturally, Thea was not in the mood to listen to her. To avoid arousing suspicion, she walked to the window and opened it to let the night breeze into the room. With 5 living people in such a small room, Thea and Lila were sweating. Gordon and his daughter were half covered in soil and half covered in blood. The smell in the room was terrible. Amanda, something's happened to me here. I can't move now. Search for my location and send someone here quickly. Although she was a little far away, her voice still reached Sia's ears as usual. She was contacting Amanda. It seemed that the two of them had a good relationship. After all, not everyone would be able to contact the leader directly when something happened to them. She hoped that the person sent would be an elite. Not long after, the call ended. My people will be here soon. Hang in there. Lila put down the phone. She still had some confidence in the organization's search ability. She relaxed a little and said that casually. It was not clear whether she was comforting Thea or encouraging herself. The reinforcements came quickly. 4 agents in black suits and sunglasses found the place in no time. The leader handed over his identification. After Lila checked that there were no mistakes, she ordered them to take the people in the room away first so that she could still walk out. The agents obeyed her orders. Felicity was easy to deal with. She wrapped her up in a sheet and threw her into the car like a dead pig. Chapter 74. When they were about to transport Gordon and his daughter, they ran into a small problem. The criminals also knew that this was an important person, so they had tied them up very tightly. Then, Sia had tied them up twice. Finally, when the iron chains clashed with each other during the air transport, the two of them were tied up like a ball of thread. The few agents did not know the inside story, so they were all surprised that the criminals tied them up in such a non-mainstream way. Fortunately, they kept quiet and didn't ask any questions. Thea had already made up a lie. She couldn't tell them that the criminals tied them up properly and that this was the product of her post-processing. Since they didn't ask, they assumed it was the criminals who did it. Although the four burly men could easily carry the father and daughter away and load them into the car, it would show how incompetent they were. Especially in front of Laura, who was one of the higher-ups in the organization, they had to show off their contributions. If they didn't show off now, when would they? The leading agent gave the two behind him a look. Soon, the two came in with all kinds of electric saws, hammers, and welding tools. After working for half an hour, the four burly men finally managed to remove the chains from Gordon and his daughter. It was worth mentioning that the old director had woken up in the last 2 minutes of the iron chain being unchained. Perhaps it was because he had been kidnapped by a variety of bad guys over the years, but now that he was old, his body inevitably showed signs of aging, which was why he had been in a coma for such a long time. When he opened his eyes and saw several men in black holding electric saws and welding tools around him, he wasn't surprised at all. He shouted very naturally, "Come at me. Don't touch my daughter." The agents were dumbfounded. As their leader, Laura hurriedly explained the situation to them. However, Gordon didn't have much trust in the government. He was still wondering if they were the ones behind this. To be able to knock out the entire campus so easily, ordinary people wouldn't be able to get their hands on such a powerful poison gas. The Heaven's Eye Society was the most suspicious. Laura didn't know whether to laugh or cry when she saw the suspicion in his eyes. She also realized how suspicious she was of Thea when she first woke up. It was human nature. Laura suddenly thought of her own experience. She pulled Thea over and told the old director about it. "Thank you, Miss Thea. I don't know what to say about your selfless help." Gordon had already figured out the situation. The people around him weren't bad guys. The electric saws and welding tools looked scary, but they were all there to help him untie the chains. He could tell that they were very old. Besides, he had a good impression of Thea. There was no need for her to team up with the government agents to kidnap him and his daughter. In fact, he thought that Thea didn't care about his family's money. She was the heir of a large financial group and had given him the opportunity to become famous. She didn't care about fame or fortune. She came all the way here to help him. It was not honest of him to suspect her for no reason. However, his acceptance of reality was still a shock to Laura. "You didn't believe me at all when I tried to persuade you on behalf of the organization. How can you believe someone else's words? Is our organization's reputation that low?" Gordon wasn't an ordinary person. He was a police chief with a population of tens of millions. He was a well-known figure in society. Laura was ready to go back and advise Amanda to improve the situation. No matter what the truth was, they should at least do a better job of keeping up appearances. Otherwise, let alone ordinary people, even the high-ranking officials wouldn't trust them. They should just go back to their own homes. The four of them drove 2 cars. Thea had almost recovered and didn't sit in their car. Instead, she got on the skateboard and followed behind them. This was the first time Laura saw her skateboard. She had only heard about it before, but now that she saw the real thing, she was stunned. It wasn't difficult to make this thing. At least for an organization like theirs that received funding from the government, they could definitely make it with a lot of USD. What was difficult was the design concept. Could this kind of equipment be used in the front line? Laura thought about it and felt that it was a little difficult. She knew that this thing wasn't cheap. It was useless in small quantities. It would be easy to get into conflicts if she gave it to someone else. If she gave it to someone else, would her organization have enough money? Thea followed behind the car for half an hour and arrived at a group of villas that weren't very big. It was very cold and quiet, and there was a sense that no one was allowed to enter. This is our base in Gotham. Please come in. Laura rested for half a day. Relying on her young body and high resistance to poison, she had basically recovered her mobility. She was no longer in the miserable state she was in when she ate too much at the buffet. Director Gordon was still unable to walk, but he didn't need anyone to help him. He got himself a walking stick and walked in shakily. There were specialized medical personnel in the base. They checked the two sleeping beauties who were still unconscious and concluded that they were fine and would wake up soon. However, they didn't know how long it would take. As they didn't know what caused them to faint, they couldn't be sure. They also took blood samples for the 3 people who had woken up. Before the results were out, no one dared to drug them. They could only get a glucose drip to replenish their water. Just as they were about to leave, Thea took out the 2 gas masks from her backpack and handed them to them. This is the mask that the criminals wear. I don't know if it's a regular product, but I think it's specially made. You guys should take it and test it. Hurry up and analyze it. Laura didn't wait for them to reply and immediately gave the order. She had been tormented so much that she had forgotten what she wanted to do when she first went to the campus. She had never been so embarrassed in her life. She just wanted to find the mastermind behind this and shoot him twice with her handgun from the bottom up. Then, she would talk about other things. Laura still had to arrange the work, so she got up and left after a while. Thea and Gordon looked at the 2 sleeping beauties and wondered when they would wake up. Felicity should have woken up a long time ago. She could be said to have inhaled the least amount of poison among them. However, the doctor said that it was related to one's body constitution. This made Thea a little worried. After all, she didn't have a body constitution. This girl didn't even train. God knows how bad her body constitution was. Babla did train a lot, but she couldn't withstand the amount of poison she inhaled. After being dragged around by Thea, there was still a big bump on her head. Just now, the medical personnel looked at the bump strangely. They couldn't understand why the girl was beaten up when she was unconscious. In the end, they could only conclude that the criminals had gone crazy. Just as Thea was thinking about starting a bet and guessing who would wake up first, Felicity didn't disappoint the people of Star City and woke up first. Chapter 75. It would be an exaggeration to say that she had woken up. Felicity was actually still in a semi-conscious state. She kept mumbling things like, "Daddy, Mommy, don't go." Under Gordon's anxious gaze, Barbara woke up in less than half a minute, and the old director heaved a sigh of relief. Although Barbara woke up later, her constitution was far stronger than Felicity's. After all, she had trained hard before. The reason why she woke up later than Felicity was mainly because she had inhaled too much oxygen. In addition, someone had dragged her all the way here, and she was still feeling dizzy. The medical staff quickly injected the 2 of them with some injections to increase their stamina and speed up their recovery. After a preliminary analysis by a few pharmacologists, although most of the drugs couldn't be used, some antibacterial and anti-inflammatory drugs wouldn't conflict with their recovery. This was especially so when they saw the huge bump on Barbara's head. If they didn't give her some medicine in time, she would really be disfigured. Although she was still a little weak, Barbara recovered at lightning speed. She could already see her biological father in front of her clearly and could speak intermittently. Felicity, on the other hand, was in a much worse state. She was still in a semi-conscious state. However, it was a good thing that she could wake up. Thea felt that the medical staff were really resourceful. It was much better than her method of waking someone up by pouring cold water on them. "Daddy, where are we?" Barbara gradually regained consciousness. She looked around in confusion. This wasn't where they were before. "Where are we?" Gordon also didn't know where this place was. He was also sent here in a daze. At his age, his recovery speed naturally wasn't as fast as a young person's. However, in order to let his daughter recover in peace, he made up a lie that wasn't really a lie. "This is a secret location. It's very safe here. Where's Robin?" Barbara looked around and didn't see her boyfriend. She felt a little uneasy and hurriedly asked her father. Oh, only then did Gordon realize that Robin wasn't around. Thea didn't mention anything just now. Could it be that they didn't manage to save him? He turned his head and gave Thea a questioning look. What could Thea say? He could only shake his head gently. Robin is still in the school. We'll rescue him later. Chief Gordon was generally supportive of Robin's relationship with his daughter. However, he was somewhat displeased with his son-in-law, so he was not angry at Sia for not rescuing Robin. Instead, he felt that the kid should be taught a lesson. Otherwise, most people in this world would forget their fathers when they had a man, and forget their mothers when they got a wife. When Barbara heard that her boyfriend hadn't come out, she didn't know who had fished her out. She was a little anxious and worried, and fainted again under the multiple blows. They watched as Gordon hugged his daughter and cried, "Barbara, wake up, open your eyes." Thea felt her teeth ache. She had only fainted, not died. There was no need to be so dramatic. Since both of them were awake, her efforts tonight weren't in vain. She turned around and walked out of the room to find the researchers in the laboratory to see if they had analyzed the composition of the poisonous gas. If possible, she still had to rescue Robin. Besides, Catwoman was nowhere to be found. At the same time, Laura walked into a sealed room and gave a long password. Amanda's dark face appeared on the monitor. Laura, you're recovering fast. Thank you for your concern, sir. Both of them didn't want to waste time and quickly got to the point. Sir, this is the blood test report for me, Thea, and Gordon. The amount of poisonous gas in our blood is beyond what a human body can tolerate. Gordon and I inhaled about the same amount. I'm better than Gordon because I'm trained, but Thea's is much more than the two of us. Laura held the report in her hand and reported in a low voice. Then what do you mean? Is she a psychic? Amanda asked noncommittally. On the contrary, her blood, cells, and hemoglobin are all at the level of a normal human. Her body can withstand such a huge burden, but she can still fight fiercely and save 3 people. This only shows how strong her willpower is. At least, if it were me, I wouldn't be able to do it. Agents were very pragmatic people. They knew the limits of their abilities. If they could do it, they could, and if they couldn't, they couldn't. If they didn't have the ability to complete the mission and force themselves to do it, they would end up killing a lot of people. That was why Laura admitted that she didn't have the willpower to do it. She couldn't even walk 2 steps, let alone fight the enemy. You must be kidding. Oh. Amanda didn't feel anything special because it wasn't like there weren't people like that. Some people relied on their strong willpower to do incredible things. People like that existed in the military and in other places. Batman was a living example. He was attacked by poisonous gas many times. Although it was ugly, he managed to escape every time. Comparing Bruce and Thea's past experiences, Amanda looked for similarities between the two. She found a lot. First of all, they were very rich. At least, they were richer than her, who worked her way up from the military for a fixed salary. Secondly, their families suffered terrible misfortunes and they were surrounded by wolves. The only difference between the two was that Star City was brighter, while Gotham was darker. Could it be that it was easier for the children of rich families to become superheroes? Amanda couldn't help but have this thought. Should she find a few more of them to test in the future? They weren't greedy for money, they weren't afraid of death, and their hearts were filled with ideals. This was quite suitable for her organization. Stopping her thoughts, Amanda asked Laura, "What's your conclusion? Do you think she fits our criteria?" "Yes, I think she fits, at least, more than Batman. She can be a partner of the Heaven's Eye Society," Laura said with certainty. "I understand," Amanda said and turned off the long-distance call. She sat on the chair and looked at the document in her hand. Thea's mother, Moira, had officially submitted to the government to participate in the next mayoral election. Currently, she was far ahead of the other candidate in the polls. Her policy wasn't complicated. It was to restore employment and develop new economic growth points. Amanda used to treat these empty words as waste paper, but this time, because of the little butterfly Thea, she had to take it seriously. If Moira was successfully elected, she would enter the eyes of the country's highest ruler. As a secret organization of the government, she would naturally be on the same side as Amanda. At the same time, she could also pull Thea, the superhero, to the government's side. From this point of view, Thea was indeed more suitable than Batman, who was mentally unstable and might go crazy at any time. Chapter 76. Through Lara's judgment and her own analysis, she finally made up her mind. She took out a document and added Thea Quinn after Bruce Wayne's name at the beginning of the document. The mission of the Heavenly Eye Society was to be responsible for the safety of the entire human race. Its full name was the Advanced Superhuman Joint Research Group. It was originally created by Air Force Colonel Steve Trevor, but as time passed and the relationship between Steve and Wonder Woman grew, the organization became more and more hostile to the government and financial groups. Amanda, this shrewd and ruthless woman, entered the eyes of the upper echelons at this time. Using all kinds of righteous excuses, she diverted a lot of resources from Steve. Although the leader of the organization was still Steve, as the number of supporters increased, she had also become an important figure in the Heavenly Eye Society. As a newcomer without any background or experience, Amanda had to constantly strengthen her authority to obtain more resources. She urgently needed more contributions to reach the highest point of the Heaven's Eye Society. She wanted to take in the super criminals locked up by the organization for her own use. After all, many of the missions were dangerous and cold-blooded, and it was difficult to send ordinary soldiers or agents to complete them. At this time, she needed these villains to do the dirty work, but these people would not bow down easily. She desperately needed some superheroes that she could influence to deter these villains. Originally, Batman was a very good choice, but now, Thea seemed to be a good choice. Batman was more mature, but he was mentally unstable and did not like those in power. Thea was young and inexperienced, but her mother was about to enter the upper echelons, so the chances of her betrayal were very small. Should she choose someone with more experience or someone she could trust? These two choices made it difficult for her to choose. Luckily, there was still plenty of time, so she could only put this problem aside. Lila walked out of the room and let out a long sigh in the dark night. She vaguely knew about Amanda's plan, but she didn't know how her report would affect Sia, a girl she could get along with. Whether it was good or bad, she could only let time tell. She was just reporting according to what she had observed. "Sir, the other two have woken up." An agent waited outside the door for a while and immediately reported when he saw her coming out. "Got it." Laura nodded. Since they were awake, she would go and visit them. She walked to the door and was about to push it open when she heard the conversation between the father and daughter. "Dad, Robin is in danger now, you know. That guy from Star City should have saved Robin instead of saving this unknown woman. If Robin was here, we could have gone back to save everyone." Barbara complained to Chief Gordon in the room. The guy from Star City she was referring to was Miss Thea. After all, she was her savior, and it was inappropriate to use her to describe her. She didn't want to use honorifics either. In the end, she chose a vague guy from Star City instead. Chief Gordon didn't think that there was a problem with this rescue mission. He knew Lara's identity, and it was already good enough that he had saved all that he could. As for Robin, he really didn't think that he would be of much use. It was true that he could fight, but how many people could he fight? 5 or 10. In this kind of situation, it was actually useless. Only his own daughter was treated like a treasure. If they had saved Robin, who knows where they would be hiding now? How could there be such a spacious villa for them to rest in, with 6 or 7 medical staff busily taking care of them? However, for the sake of his daughter, he didn't say anything. Just because he didn't say anything didn't mean that Lara wouldn't say anything. At first, Lara didn't understand what was going on, but when she heard unknown woman, she thought about it a few times and realized that it was referring to her. What do you mean? Shouldn't you save me? Should you leave me in the hands of the criminals? Should I die just because your boyfriend is worth saving? Don't fall into my hands, you *tch, or you'll regret being born. Lara climbed to a high position in the Sky Eye Society, where good people mixed with bad people. She wasn't a good-tempered person, and she had a lot of bad intentions in her heart. Women were all good at acting. She pretended as if nothing had happened and knocked on the door. She expressed her concern to Gordon and his daughter before leaving. When she returned to her room, she took out a report and started writing. This document was her original purpose, which was to evaluate the abilities, personalities, and preferences of Batman's team members. When she drew Barbara's piece of paper, Lara sneered and started writing without thinking. Of course, she wouldn't write about Barbara in a particularly bad way. That would be seen through at a glance, and it would seem that she was taking revenge, which would affect her career. The adjectives she used were all good words, such as warm-hearted, courageous, and eager for justice. She wrote a large piece of paper. These words were good words for publicity, but in the eyes of the Special Battlefront, especially a black-hearted woman like Amanda, these words were synonymous with idiocy, and especially idiocy. If it was a report from Batman or Thea, she might have verified it, but for a second or third-tier hero like Barbara, she basically just read it, signed it, and stored it. She didn't have the energy to verify it. Whatever her subordinate said was the truth, not to mention a subordinate of Lara's level. Even if she found a mistake, she wouldn't take it seriously. She couldn't see any problems now, but when she encountered something more troublesome in the future and needed a hot-blooded hero to charge at the front, this file would play a role in adding fuel to the fire. Just as Lara was thinking about how to write a 500-word review with a pen in her mouth, a subordinate knocked on the door. "Sir, Miss Thea is back." "Back? When did she go out? What did she do?" This was the bad thing about this group of heroes. They were too independent. She had only been here for a short period of time, and this person had already run out. Where is she? Lara's head was full of question marks, and she thought that she had to have a good talk with her about discipline. In the interrogation room, Miss Thea captured someone alive. The subordinate's face was full of excitement. Oh, amazing! That was the only way Lara could express her feelings now. It hadn't even been 20 minutes, and she had killed another round. What a fierce woman. What kind of grudge do you have with this group of criminals? You've killed 3 rounds in one night. Actually, Thea wasn't as fierce as she thought. She just felt that she was basically invincible in the air, so she flew over boldly. Before she left, she specially went to get a gas mask that was said to have the strongest effect in the Heaven's Eye Association. Although it wasn't targeted, it was better in terms of overall protection. However, it was different this time. The process could only be described as not smooth. The people in the camp weren't fools. 4 or 5 searchlights illuminated the entire camp as if it was daytime. The patrolling criminals stretched their necks and looked up at the sky as if there was something wrong with their necks. Thea was still a few hundred meters away from the camp when she was discovered. Chapter 77. The first time you came, we ignored you. The second time you came, we magnanimously let you go. In the blink of an eye, you're here again. Even if they could tolerate it, they couldn't. Not all of the bandits in the camp were illiterate. There were a few who boasted of their high intelligence. They gathered the hostages, strengthened the security, turned on all the searchlights, and even set up a small radar. That was why Thea was discovered before she even reached the camp. Even though she was discovered, Thea wasn't in a hurry. She was 200 meters above the ground, and the people below her were like ants. Bows and arrows were useless. Even if she had bombs, she wouldn't dare to throw them. If a few hundred citizens were killed, her name would be completely red. The people below couldn't do anything to her. Gotham didn't have that many high-tech weapons. Everyone's focus was on curing the mentally ill, which was also known as spiritual development. There was very little development of firearms, and even a rocket launcher was considered powerful. As for the heat-seeking missiles that could threaten Thea, the bandits didn't have any. They angrily raised their AKs and fired a few rounds into the sky, not caring if they hit their targets. The smarter ones pointed their guns at the hostages' heads and raised their loudspeakers to shout at the sky, implying that if Thea didn't come down, they would shoot. Thea didn't take it seriously. You guys have watched too many movies. I'm not on the side of justice. Kill me if you want. I don't even know these people. Even if you kill Robin, it has nothing to do with me. I'll mourn for him for half a minute. You want me to go down and die? Are you kidding me? She circled the camp twice as if nothing had happened. She could see that the bandits were a motley crew without any discipline. They had tattoos, or piercings. Not many of them were dressed normally. However, their equipment was pretty good. They were all wearing American military uniforms. Did they rob a military base in Gotham? However, Thea looked twice and realized that they were just small fries. They didn't seem to last more than 3 minutes. None of them had a name on them. At least, she didn't see any. There was no one at the place where Robin had fainted earlier. They could see a few criminals gathering the hostages. They could only apologize to Robin. They had really tried their best. You can pray to God to protect you from now on. Just as he was about to return home, he saw a criminal pacing back and forth on the side, as if he was relieving himself. Thea watched the man swagger around. She didn't know if he had kidney deficiency or something else, but he stood there for a full 3 minutes. Are you trying to lure me down? Thea scanned the area with her infrared glasses and found no less than 10 people hiding nearby. Originally, I was planning to go back like this, but since you're giving me a live witness, I don't want to make it seem like the people of Star City don't know etiquette, so I can only accept it. Thea didn't use her maximum speed before, so these people didn't know how fast her thing was floating in the sky. They just assumed that it was about the same speed as a car. Therefore, the circle of people lying in ambush could only be considered to be neither big nor small. Thea arrived at the side of the bait in less than 150 kilometers per hour. It was a forest, and there were 8 criminals hiding there. The infrared glasses showed that these 8 guys were squatting motionlessly, waiting for Thea to take the bait. Just when these people thought that the enemy would fly over their heads and perform a dumpling wrapping performance, Thea suddenly sped up, took a big circle, and rushed down from the other side of the bait. These people didn't expect such a variable. Caught off guard, their weakness of not having received formal training was undoubtedly exposed. 2 criminals reflexively rushed out with their rifles. The 2 people who rushed out were a little confused. I came out just like that. What should I do next? While they were in a daze, the people behind them also shouted, "Come back! Come back!" The two brainless guys turned back into the forest. But at this time, Thea had already completed her mission. Her skateboard was originally modified with emergency equipment. There was a chain on each side of the V-shaped skateboard. She used one to pull Gordon and his daughter onto the ticket, and now she had the other one to use on this guy who was holding up his pants. She instantly increased her speed to 300 kilometers per hour and rushed to about 100 meters in front of the bait. She didn't know what these criminals told him to pay attention to, or was this person trying to be realistic? Anyway, when Thea saw this person, he was unbuckling his belt. Thea's sudden appearance startled the enemy. His brain didn't react. Should he pull up his pants or take out his weapon first? It was dark in the middle of the night. With Thea's speed, she could only see a blurry figure in front of her. Her left foot stepped on a mechanism, and a chain with a sharp arrowhead pierced into the bait's shoulder. This arrowhead wasn't designed by Thea. It came with the original equipment. Its purpose was to grab onto solid objects such as rock walls and tree trunks, and use the chain to create a passage in the air. The arrowhead was made of special steel. When it nailed the target, 3 small claws would automatically pop out from the inside to ensure that it wouldn't fall off. Even a rock could pierce through his body, let alone a living person. The bait did not know that his treatment had been upgraded to the same level as the big rock on the bridge pier. When the arrowhead, which was as thick as an arm, pierced through his body, he fainted without making a sound. Thea felt that his body was probably not as strong as a rock. Before he fainted, she circled around him again. Then, under the shocked gazes of the others, she left with the captive in her hand. Out of caution, she didn't want to expose Lara's base. Relying on her speed, she flew half a circle around Gotham before returning to the base with the captive in her hand. When she returned to the base, she took off the gas mask. The mask was quite powerful. This time, she wasn't affected by the poisonous gas at all. Unfortunately, it was said that the production cost was very high. Even with Heaven's Eye Society's wealth, they could only make a few of them. The number that was distributed to the base was even fewer. She got off the skateboard and threw the captive to the agents. "This is the one we captured alive. See if you can get anything out of him." The agents looked at the captive. Half of his body was dyed red. Fortunately, he was flying at high altitude at night. The cold air froze most of his wounds, so he was dragged back alive. In addition, when he fainted, his body automatically went into protective mode. All his bodily functions were at an extremely low level. That was why he wasn't killed by the pressure of 300 kilometers per hour. This was the scene that Lara saw when she entered the base. She had been in the army for many years and had seen worse than this. She didn't think much of it. She immediately ordered for a cardiac stimulant and epinephrine injection. She wanted the captive's confession immediately. She didn't care whether he was dead or alive. Sia felt uncomfortable about being plotted against, so she had to add an update. After all, Sia was someone who lived on campus, so she wasn't innocent. She was just unjustly implicated, and she was inexplicably knocked down. She would be lying if she said she wasn't angry. This captive didn't look like a strong-willed person. It wasn't that she couldn't get anything out of him with a whip or an iron clamp. However, she didn't have time to waste. She ordered her men to prepare 2 pounds of sodium thiopental, also known as the truth serum. She didn't believe that he wouldn't talk. Chapter 78. Before the captive regained consciousness, Gordon, Garen, and Felicity slowly walked over. It was not that they did not want to walk, but they did not have the stamina to do so. "Hey, are you okay?" Thea patted Felicity's little face. "I'm fine, just a little swollen. Do you know why the robbers hit my face?" Felicity's eyes were filled with confusion. Thea glanced at her face from the corner of her eyes. It was probably a little red and swollen. She swore that she did it out of kindness, but in order to save her, she had rubbed her face until it was swollen. She could not tell the truth, so she could only blame it on the robbers. She quickly shook her head. I don't know, it was already like this when I saved you. Oh, right, apply this on your face, it's quite effective. Then, she took out a bottle of ointment that Madame Shiva had given her and tossed it over. Turning her head, she saw Barbara's side profile. Her forehead was swollen like the golden-horned king's from afar. Did I do this too? Feeling a little guilty, she tossed another bottle over. This is for you, the swelling will go down quickly after applying it. Barbara had been listening to her the whole time, so she caught the bottle when she saw what Felicity had tossed to her. It was fine for her to say weird things behind her back without anyone noticing, but she had to be polite in front of her. After all, she was the savior of her father and her. Thank you for saving us, Barbara said politely. You went back to school again. Did you see Robin? Thea sighed. I didn't see him, the security was too tight, I couldn't get in alone, I'm sorry. Actually, her apology was not sincere, it was just her habit to say nice things. This was because no one would blame her. Even Barbara couldn't find fault with her for rushing in 3 times in one night without any support or protective equipment. After all, she had been lying down the entire night. The only difference was that she was a captive before, and now she was a free person. However, she didn't contribute a single cent of her strength. Seeing that she did not say anything, Thea ignored her and turned to Felicity. Can the drone still be used? I haven't seen Catwoman, go look for her. Ah. Catwoman, she probably hasn't returned to campus. She's been outside all this time. I'll contact her immediately. Felicity was still a little dizzy, and she couldn't come up with a lie after thinking for a long time. She could only take out her phone and make a call. When did you two become so close? Thea felt that it was quite strange. These two people's personalities were almost completely different. One couldn't stay at home while the other could stay at home forever. To be able to catch up with such different living habits, it could only be said that their natures were similar. Hurry up and call her back. Thea could not be bothered with these trivial matters. The most important thing now was to gather all the combat forces, and then wipe out the pests who were destroying her plan to unite Gotham and Gotham. At this point, she no longer cared about whether she had the right to command. She had already gone to the scene 3 times. She was the only one who understood the situation the best, and she did not ask for the opinions of the others. Chief Gordon, how many police officers can you gather now? I need to be at the scene in half an hour. Theo looked at the old chief with a deep voice. You still want to go? Chief Gordon was shocked by her desperation. How many times had she done this tonight? However, when he thought about how an outsider like her was so enthusiastic, as a Gotham citizen, he could not fall behind. He calculated in his mind. About 20. That's enough. Help Felicity command them and get them to the campus directly. The old chief's combat strength might have been good when he was young, but now, he was not even as good as a normal person. It was best for him to provide support from the rear. Babla, recover your strength in 20 minutes and change into your combat uniform. We're going to save people. Felicity, have you contacted Catwoman? Tell her to come back quickly. Agent Lila. Thea was having fun commanding when she suddenly realized that she could not command this agent. She stopped mid-sentence. I'll go with you. Including me, there are 5 agents. I can also send a military helicopter over, but there are too many civilians there. It can only be used as a deterrent, Lila said quickly and expressed her support for Thea's arrangement. No one had any objections. The old chief and the others were used to following Batman's orders. It was a habit that could not be changed in a short period of time. Now, it was just a different person. Moreover, Thea had saved his life, so he did not feel that there was anything wrong with letting her command. Babla only wanted to save her boyfriend. She did not have any objections to anyone's command. Even though she was still staggering, she still changed into her combat uniform as instructed. In fact, she had left her clothes at the campus, so she could only find a whip and a mask. Thea began to discuss the distribution of firepower with the chief. Midway, Lila joined in. Due to the limited number of gas masks, only 5 of them could provide complete protection. The rest were just ordinary ones. As for whether they could provide effective protection, a few technicians said that there was too little data to determine. The only thing they could do now was to let the police officers wear ordinary masks to provide cover. The actual work would still be done by a few heroes. This was probably the theme of this world. Even though Thea could not figure out why they were back to the old path of individual heroism, this was the only thing she could do in this situation. Moreover, looking at the ugly faces of the people around her, it seemed like she had to be the main force. She had become the main force after helping out. This was similar to the time when Brock helped to kill the soldiers and ended up chopping down Sardras with his axe in the end. "Sir, it's all out." This time, it was the Scarecrow who spread the fear gas to attack the camp, a plain-looking agent quickly reported. F***CK, Scarecrow. How could it be this guy? Her whole group of people was defeated by this second-rate guy so easily. Thea felt that she could no longer hold back her anger. She felt like she was fully equipped to fight a tiger in the mountains, but in the end, she was bitten by a wild dog when she did not see the tiger. This was really intolerable. Perhaps her gaze was a little frightening, because the agent who came to report took a step back subconsciously. However, he still finished his report in a low voice. They plan to transport everyone away after dawn. As for where they are going, he does not know. She could not wait any longer. She had to act immediately. No one knew if they would transport the hostages in advance. After all, she had already acted rashly and alerted the enemy 3 times. They would not be so careless as to wait until dawn. "Babla, we have to leave early. How much of your combat power have you recovered?" Thea was really out of ideas now. Other than herself, she seemed to be the best fighter. Although she doubted her ability, there was really no one she could use now. Chapter 79. Looking at her unquestionable expression, what else could Barbara say? Whether it was for the sake of justice or to save her boyfriend, she had to grit her teeth and do it. She stomped her feet, feeling much better than before when she was as limp as noodles. She didn't know if she could come out alive in this state. She hesitated whether she should say goodbye to her father and say some last words. "What happened? Why did you call me back in such a hurry?" Fortunately, Catwoman's timely return gave her more confidence in this operation. She prayed in her heart that God was still watching over her. Her emotions surged, and even the various disdain she had for Catwoman in the past automatically decreased. Thea didn't have time to explain to her. She was discussing the allocation of police support with Gordon, so she gestured for Barbara to explain to her. Barbara could only reluctantly explain to Catwoman once. In fact, there were many things that she wasn't clear about. She had been lying in bed for the entire night, and could only use her own deductive abilities to reconstruct the incident. As for how true it was, no one paid attention to it. Scarecrow. This name was no stranger to Catwoman. It was an old enemy. When she heard that even Robin had fallen into the enemy's hands, Catwoman only felt that it wasn't that she didn't understand, but that the world was changing too quickly. She prayed that Robin's true identity wouldn't be discovered. He wasn't Batman, and couldn't enjoy the treatment of a broke back. If he was discovered, he would definitely be executed without a doubt. After hesitating for a moment, the Catwoman still handed her whip over to Babla. It wouldn't make a difference whether she used a dagger or a baton, but Barbara couldn't do the same. Without a whip, her combat strength would be reduced by 30%. Barbara took the whip and waved it a few times. She felt that it was quite handy. After all, it was Old Man Bruce's brand. She felt more confident with it than if she were to rush in with a pistol. Thea walked over at this time and handed each of them a gas mask. Put it on when you reach the camp. The three of us will take the lead and eliminate the enemy's resistance. The Heaven's Eye Society will be responsible for eliminating the remnants. The rest of the police will be responsible for rescuing the hostages. There are no problems. Thea looked around. Seeing that everyone had tacitly agreed to this arrangement, she waved her hand and set off. Thea found a car driven by an agent and got in. This time, she did not fly on the skateboard. Instead, she used her mind to control the skateboard to follow the team. She was afraid that she would rush in with the two remaining female members of the Bat Squad and find that backup was still on the way. That would be a joke. On the other hand, she also needed to recover some of her strength. Although she had the physique of being awake at night and sleepy during the day, she had still been tormented by the night. In the other car, Barbara and Catwoman were also trying their best to recover their strength. Seeing that Thea was so enthusiastic about eliminating the bandits, they had no choice but to seize every minute and second to adjust themselves to their best condition. Everyone, stop. Felicity, release the surveillance footage from the drones. When they were about a mile away from the camp, Thea saw that the light in the distance was as bright as day and hurriedly ordered the convoy to stop. When he arrived at Lara's command vehicle, the real-time image was transmitted. They have begun to evacuate. We can't wait any longer. Catwoman took a quick glance and said with an anxious expression. Yes, because of Thea's constant harassment throughout the night, the bandits were finally forced to evacuate. From the image, there were about 40 to 50 soldiers wearing black hoods. Occasionally, there would be a few guys in American military uniforms mixed in. They were transporting the unconscious citizens to the rear in groups of 2. However, they did not blindly choose their targets. They only chose the strong men and young women. What about Robin? Is Robin in danger? Barbara was a step slower than Catwoman due to her lack of strength. She only saw the scene of the bandits transporting the people after she got on the command vehicle. Her heart jumped to her throat, and she asked with a panicked expression. Thea wanted to say that they were transporting people, not lining up to be shot. Besides, they only chose the strong and strong ones. What danger could Robin be in after being squeezed dry by them? However, considering that Barbara had been upgraded to a powerful combatant, she could only resist the urge to complain. Putting away her frivolous thoughts, she said seriously, "Don't worry. Felicity is looking for their transport vehicles. I'll intercept them in a bit." As long as they were not crazy bandits, Thea was not afraid at all. These people did not know how to open a portal, so it would not be easy for them to escape. "Thea, I found them. There are 3 trucks full of unconscious citizens leaving the camp. There are too many people. I can't see if Robin is here." Felicity was not as strong as them. Even though she was a little lightheaded, she still followed them into the command vehicle. At this time, she had already pulled up the images of the vehicles from the drone. In order to make the images clearer, she did not care about the people around them and hacked into the satellites of some unknown country. Lara pretended not to see anything. The rest of the agents were exchanging glances, wondering if they should arrest this guy after this matter was over. This guy was too unscrupulous. She did this in front of us. We're public servants after all. I'll intercept them. The rest of you will follow our plan. Agent Lara, tell your military helicopter to attract attention from the front. Thea then started to pack her equipment. She was afraid that she would not have enough arrows. She even took a submachine gun from one of the agents. Catwoman and Barbara did not usually use guns. Batman kept a close eye on this, but now that they were far away, they could not care less. They carried their weapons and got out of the command vehicle. With a rumbling sound, a huge military helicopter appeared in their field of vision, and under their gazes, it quickly drove towards the camp. "I'm going too. You two be careful." Thea turned around and told the two girls. "You be careful too." Barbara, who had always been at odds with her, also said something. She smiled and nodded. She flew onto the skateboard and flew towards the other side of the road according to Felicity's instructions. By then, the sky was starting to brighten. Without realizing it, the whole night had passed. Sia really felt that living in Gotham required a big heart. She was exhausted from the whole night, and Master Bat had not gone crazy after guarding her for so many years. It must have been hard on him. The light was getting brighter and the visibility was getting better. It was a good thing for Thea to search for the target on the ground, but it was also good for the criminals on the ground. Even though Sia was high up in the sky and could not hear what the people below were saying, when she saw the 3 large trucks passing through the road in a single file, and many people pointing at her from the back of the trucks, she knew that they were up to no good. She had not rested for the entire night, which meant that she was very tired. They could only say that it was even more tiring for them to keep staring at the sky all the time with a fighting style that came out of nowhere. The people below rubbed their eyes to make sure that their eyes weren't playing tricks on them. That guy who could fly had caught up to them again. A few of them were so tired that they took out their pistols and rifles. They didn't care if they were in range or not and started firing at the sky. Chapter 80. Thea ignored their provocation. She sped up, overtook a few trucks, and disappeared from everyone's sight. Did she give up? Of course, that was impossible. After all, this was near the university, and the traffic was relatively developed. Thea planned to find a narrow road according to their route and cut off all the cars. Gas station. No, it was a little dangerous here. She didn't want to be shot by someone with bad eyesight. It wouldn't be good if she was hit by a large-scale AoE. Give up. Crossroads. That was even worse. If she stopped one car, what would happen if the other 2 cars split up? She didn't know how to use shadow clone technique. Give up again. She searched and searched. Suddenly, she saw a road. The 4-lane road was inexplicably blocked. Needless to say, it was the work of the city's thugs. Were they setting up roadblocks to collect tolls? Am I the one who started this road? Was this God's will? She could save a lot of trouble this time. This was it. Thea increased her altitude and looked at the 3 trucks at the end of the road in the distance. She thought disdainfully, these idiots. They didn't even send someone to scout if they wanted to take this road. They rushed out in such a hurry. What a bunch of idiots. They don't even know how to spell the word death. In fact, she had wronged them. No one was stupid. Scarecrow was a university professor. He was able to live well under the shadow of Batman, so his IQ was still up. He had ordered his men to check the road before, but after being tortured by Thea for an entire night, they had long forgotten about the order. At this time, the driver in the car was trembling nervously. He felt that he must be the enemy's first target. He was so flustered that he couldn't even differentiate between the accelerator and the brakes. The speed of the car was sometimes fast and sometimes slow. It couldn't be helped. Under such conditions, the death rate of the driver was as high as 90%. At least in the movies, the enemy's target was the driver of the first car. The rest of the people didn't feel so much pressure, but they still held their rifles and were ready to fight the enemy at any time. Just as the driver of the first car was wondering if an arrow would fly towards his eye socket or a rocket would blow him up into the sky, he saw that someone had set up a roadblock in front of him. A man with a big beard waved at him fiercely and waved at him to stop. Who was this? As the leader of the Scarecrow team, he was quite capable, but the sudden appearance of the bearded man confused him. Although he couldn't tell the gender of the enemy flying in the sky, judging from the size of the body, it shouldn't be this person, right? Moreover, looking at this person's appearance, his hair was unkempt and his face was dirty. His face was so dark that one couldn't even tell the color of his skin. When he opened his mouth, one could see a mouthful of big yellow teeth. This was Gotham's tramp outfit. Why did the flying enemy send this guy here? His heart was filled with confusion, but he didn't know if it was to find out more about the enemy or to relieve his own stress. He slowly stopped the car and stuck his neck out. "What's the matter?" The tramp's mouth twitched, but he didn't reply. Instead, he placed his left hand in his mouth and blew. Woo! Following the whistle, all sorts of people with strange outfits emerged from the surroundings. These people wore all sorts of clothes, men and women, old and young. All of a sudden, more than 20 people jumped out, armed with pistols. This time, they also held iron rods in their hands. "Give us half of the things in your car." The bearded tramp in the lead had a shotgun in his hand. He fired a shot into the sky to prove that he had bullets, and looked at the robbers in the car with a playful expression. Thea, who was hiding on a tree branch far away, was overjoyed when she saw this scene. Who said that Gotham was filled with unruly people? This was definitely a rumor. These people were still very cute. They were afraid that it would be difficult to complete this mission alone, so they didn't ask for anything in return. They even brought their own food to help her. When some people were happy, there would naturally be others who were sad. The driver in the lead was in a lot of pain. As a local, he already knew that this group of people had nothing to do with the enemy flying in the sky. This was a robber gang that was deeply characteristic of Gotham. This group of people had all sorts of weapons, and there was no organization at all. They couldn't even be considered a small gang, and could only be described as a group of people who were involved in the underworld. Compared to his own American equipment and elite training, this group of people was like children who were still drinking milk. His heart was filled with a sense of superiority, and he unconsciously revealed a mocking expression. As the leader of the robbers, the bearded tramp relied on his good eyesight, and naturally, he caught the driver's disdain. He felt that his dignity was being challenged, and without thinking, he grabbed his shotgun and fired at the driver's rearview mirror. Bang! "Did you hear me? Come down," the bearded tramp shouted fiercely. If he hadn't fired the shot, the scarecrows would have already stepped on the accelerator and rushed over. They had a mission to complete and didn't have the time to waste with this group of trash. However, his shot had angered them. They had been tormented by the enemy for an entire night without sleep, and now they were moving again before dawn. It would be a lie to say that they weren't depressed, but they forcefully suppressed their temper. Now that they saw this group of trash provoking them, they couldn't hold it in any longer. The driver picked up the walkie-talkie and said, "All of you, get down and teach this group of trash a lesson." The scarecrows had put in a lot of effort into his group. After the chaos in Gotham, he had successfully robbed an American military arsenal and armed his men to the level of a regular army. With this level of strength, he wouldn't dare to say that Gotham was invincible, but it was considered strong among the major forces. There were 3 cars, each with a driver and 3 gunmen. All 12 of them were wearing bulletproof vests and helmets, and they carried their rifles as they got down from the trucks. They didn't even need to be ordered to find cover and blind spots, which showed that they had good military skills. The bearded tramp was dumbfounded by the professionalism of this group of people. He wondered if they were American soldiers. Did he kick an iron plate? He only wanted to get rid of his pocket money, he didn't want to fight the army. Not knowing what he was thinking, the fully armed scarecrows didn't want to waste time with him. A loud voice rang out, "Ready, fire!" Thea, who was hiding in the distance, was initially shocked by the excellent equipment of this group of people. When she saw that they were about to open fire, she naturally couldn't let the Gotham crowd, who had brought their own rations, get hurt. Although they were outnumbered 12 to 20, and the crowd had a certain advantage, the difference in equipment was too great. If they really fought, it would be a crushing victory. She had already taken out a magnetic arrow and knocked it on her bow. When she heard that they were about to open fire, she didn't hesitate and shot it towards the center of the battlefield. Buzz! There was a low buzzing sound, and a paw, paw, paw. Guns were constantly attracted to the arrow by the strong magnetic force. Thea was very generous. She included both sides within the range of the arrow's effect. In less than 10 seconds, the low buzzing sound stopped. No matter which side they were on, they were surprised to find that the guns in their hands had disappeared. Chapter 81. Thea observed from afar and nodded her head. The effect was not bad. She had forcefully evened out the strength of both sides. This time, the enthusiastic citizens who had brought their own rations to help her should be able to use their advantage in numbers, right? The two groups of people did not know that she was secretly messing with them. The absorption speed was too fast, and they did not see the arrows clearly. They only saw that the guns were gathered together by an unknown object, and finally formed into an irregular cylinder in the middle of the field. What was that? This question appeared in many people's minds. Those with good eyesight noticed, why did my gun fly up? Sensing that their advantage in weapons was gone, the Scarecrow team reacted very quickly. Two of them jumped onto the vehicle. In fact, it was not that they could not fight with their bare hands, but it was inevitable that they would suffer some injuries. For example, they might lose 2 teeth or break 2 fingers. Previously, they had used weapons with the mentality of crushing the enemy. Now that it involved injuries, a few of them immediately retreated. The leader saw that everyone had the intention to retreat, so he decided to retreat. They wanted to run, but Thea would not let them do as they wished. She hid in the forest behind the homeless people, turned on her voice changer, and shouted with a hoarse voice, "They want to run, charge." After that, she took out a normal arrow, aimed at the fastest person on the opposite side, and shot an arrow from afar. The distance was a little far, about 200 meters. Thea did not have much confidence, so she aimed at the person's torso. She did not see where the arrow hit the person's body. She only heard him scream. One of his legs was about to step onto the truck when the arrow suddenly appeared and hit his leg, which was not supported by a bulletproof vest. Under the intense pain, he did not manage to take a step forward and fell off the truck. There were still a few people in the Scarecrow team who understood. They realized that something was wrong and quickly called for a few people to get on the truck. However, they forgot the nature of the Gotham citizens, and that was madness. They were the so-called people who would get excited at the sight of blood. They were all violent and had a bit of the demeanor of the orcs. The hot-blooded citizens were already trembling in fear and were ready to scatter and flee. Thea's unexpected intervention had restored their morale. When they saw an unlucky person fall from the sky, the remaining people turned around and fled instead of seeking revenge. The hot-blooded citizens felt that the enemies in front of them were only so-so. Why were they running? They were obviously afraid of them. Most of the weapons they brought out were cold weapons like water pipes, baseball bats, and the like. There were very few firearms, so Thea's magnetic arrows didn't have much effect on them. Seeing that the enemy had no weapons and was preparing to escape, a few rough men, who were like reincarnated ghosts, rushed forward while cursing. The Scarecrows, who had the intention to retreat, couldn't take it anymore when they saw the fists and clubs right in front of them. It wasn't like they couldn't beat them. Since they were so stubborn about wanting to die, they would fulfill their wishes. Many of them took out the daggers they carried with them and stabbed at the hot-blooded citizens. As the sounds of "aw" and "aw" rang out, Thea realized that the combat strength of this group of people wasn't bad. She might not be able to take down these 11 people with her bare hands. Yes, there were only 11 people left. The person who was shot by her earlier was panting on the ground. She wasn't sure if he had suffered a second injury from the fall. This wouldn't do. The 11 people with amazing combat strength and great teamwork had already taken down the 2 hobos who were charging at the front. Among them was the big bearded man who had blocked the way previously. He was originally dressed in decent clothes, but his fierce face was now stabbed until it looked like a bloody gourd. He was lying on the ground with blood foaming out of his mouth. She couldn't watch the show anymore. Roll up her sleeves and attack. That was impossible. Thea had always kept in mind that she was here to help. She couldn't lose sight of this goal. In order to make the fight between the 2 groups of Gotham players fairer and more entertaining, she decided to attack whichever side was stronger. She knocked an arrow and started to aim. Soon, a person who was wielding 2 daggers and waving them up and down like a windmill entered her sight. However, this group of people were wearing bulletproof vests, so she could only aim at their unprotected limbs. As the sounds of a swoosh rang out, Thea changed her target with every arrow she shot. This showed the excellent mobility of the skateboard. Her movements were erratic like the wind, and her stamina consumption was almost 0. Even though the scarecrows had already noticed the abnormality, the robbers had holes in their brains. They only saw their enemies fall to the ground and didn't realize that there were reinforcements in the dark. They thought that they were the ones who had killed them. Soon, 4 of the 11 people were shot down by Thea, and another one was taken down by the vagabonds. The situation was now 6 against 18. With such a huge difference in numbers, the elite training and skillful cooperation of the scarecrows could no longer be used. If they could retreat while fighting, they might be able to win with fewer people. However, they couldn't run. If the people in the car couldn't send the scarecrows over, based on their understanding of their leader, they would be scared to death. The 6 of them could only form groups of 2, back to back, and barely fend off the attacks of the vagabonds. At the same time, they were praying to God in their hearts. Thea didn't know if God knew about this, but she did show her style. She looked at the 18 valiant vagabonds and felt a little uncomfortable. If this group of people swarmed her, she would be in a bit of trouble. If you don't believe me, just look at Grandmaster Ye's 3rd Division when he was surrounded by dozens of people at the shipyard. The advantage in numbers was very intimidating when one's strength hadn't reached a certain level. There was no need to think about dozens of people. Thea wasn't that fierce. It wouldn't be easy for her to deal with this group of people. Fortunately, there was a ready-made meat shield. This time, she decided to help the scarecrows and aimed her evil bow at the warm-hearted citizens of Gotham. The process of dealing with these people who didn't have bulletproof vests could only be described as easy and pleasant. In less than half a minute, she had shot down another 8 vagabonds. The situation was once again balanced. 6 against 10. At this time, no matter how stupid these people were, they knew that there was an enemy hiding nearby. They couldn't possibly think that the arrows on their companions were self-inflicted wounds. The burly man who had drunk a lot of hamburgers and cola stopped attacking the scarecrows and looked around with his mouth wide open. Thea couldn't let them stop. If the vagabonds found her and beat her up, she would have to spend a lot of effort to chase after the scarecrows and the others. Now was the best time to wipe them all out. She took out an arrow and knocked it on the bow. This arrow wasn't one of her special arrowheads. It was a modified arrowhead that she had modified using the smoke grenade provided by Batman's team. She hadn't had a chance to test the specific data, but she would use it today to see the effect. Whoosh! The arrowhead stabbed into the ground. With a slight vibration, it triggered the mechanism in the arrowhead. A burst of white smoke instantly enveloped the area. Chapter 82. Before Sia, who had shot the arrow, made any expression, the people in the smoke-shrouded area had already spontaneously reported the results of the arrow to her. "It's Batman's smokescreen, run, Batman is here." The people in the smokescreen were clamoring like they were in a wet market. Thea was speechless. Did they make a mistake? How could they be so scared just from the smell of the arrow? Thea was very worried about how Master Bruce had been bullying the citizens of Gotham City for so many years. Wouldn't the uncured illness worsen if he kept scaring them like that? Since they had misunderstood, then let it be. Thea couldn't just stand out and introduce herself. Just pretend that it was Master Bruce who attacked them. She put on her infrared glasses, aimed at the red figures in the smokescreen, and started shooting indiscriminately. Just like playing Angry Birds, she constantly chose her target, pulled her bow, and continued the process. She didn't care whether the target was shot dead or not. I have the situation under control. How's the situation in the school? When will my reinforcements arrive? Thea enjoyed this game very much. She made the smokescreen 3 times thicker than the original smokescreen, and it wouldn't disperse in a short period of time. The weapon that was originally meant for running was modified to be the same as Momochi Zabuza's mist concealment technique. However, she still remembered her mission during the game. She asked in her headset, "Where are the reinforcements from the police?" She didn't even see a ghost. There was a busy tone. "Ah, Thea, they're all busy. The enemy is very strong." Felicity saw that no one was speaking, so she had to answer herself. "How many enemies do they have?" Infrared was not a good thing. She could only see biothermal energy and could not tell whether the person had been shot or not. Thea could only focus on those who could still run. 9. Feline Girl will take on 4, Barbara will take on 3, and Lila and the agent will take on 1 each. What the heck, there are only a few enemies. I thought that Gotham's villains would all be there, but it turns out that there are only 9 of them. I have 12 enemies and 20 enthusiastic citizens, and they didn't even make a sound. Needless to say, these guys must have grabbed a stick and started the fight. Do you guys have brains? What a fierce comparison. However, such words could easily damage their morale. At this time, Thea could no longer see any moving thermal reflections in front of her. She was afraid that she would miss something, so she shot another arrow at each target. "Hurry up and call 3 drivers. I'll go and support them." Thea didn't dare to leave immediately. What if she met a person with a tenacious vitality or a heart that was on the right side? What if the person pretended to be dead on the ground and happily pulled the people away after seeing her fly away? Wouldn't her efforts be in vain? "You're pretty fast." "Phew. We're almost done," Catwoman said in the communication channel while panting. "Since you said so, I'm not in a hurry to go over." Thea was also a little tired. In less than 5 minutes, she had shot 90 arrows in one go. This was different from shooting dead targets. These people knew how to dodge and run. Furthermore, she couldn't tell who was wearing a bulletproof vest and who wasn't. She could only aim at their limbs. The smoke hadn't completely dispersed, so she didn't know how her results were. Thea didn't just rest. She flew onto the skateboard and circled around a few cars. Among the crowd, she found the figure of a skinny, black-haired man. "Hey guys, I saw Robin. He's sleeping very soundly." "That's great. Thank you, Thea." Barbara was relieved when she heard that her boyfriend was fine. She was in a good mood and her potential was unleashed. She finished off an opponent in a few punches and kicks. Just as Thea was thinking about whether to wake Robin up or tie him to the skateboard while unconscious, the Gotham police arrived. Although she only called 3 of them, they were still very enthusiastic. More than 10 of them came, led by Gordon himself. They were all wearing GCPD bulletproof vests and carrying submachine guns. As the smoke gradually dispersed, the tragic scene appeared in front of everyone's eyes. The originally black asphalt road was now stained red with blood. More than 30 people were lying on the road that was less than 100 meters long. They were all wearing military uniforms and had pieces of cloth hanging from their necks. There were all kinds of people, but they all had one thing in common: they were all pierced with arrows. Some had 3 or 4 arrows, while the others had at least 2. The entire area didn't look like a modern road. It looked like they had returned to an ancient battlefield, where a group of English longbowmen had shot a rain of arrows across the distance of time. Many people were nailed to the ground by Thea's 4 limbs. Their hands and feet were nailed to the ground. Originally, this wasn't a big deal. They just needed to bandage their wounds. However, in the chaos of the crowd, this kind of damage was magnified to the extreme. Many people were pinned to the ground by arrows. After being pushed and shoved by the crowd, the metal arrowheads cut off their hands and feet. What wasn't a serious injury became a crippling wound. Ugh! 2 young police officers were dizzy from the scene of broken limbs and the thick smell of blood. They ran to the side and vomited under the sympathetic gaze of their companions. Gordon was not as ignorant as the young man. When he was young, he had served in the military and fought in wars, and he had seen worse than this. However, after so many years at Gotham, he had not seen such a large-scale bloodbath before, and he was disgusted by it. Just as he was about to order his subordinates to check if there were any survivors, he unexpectedly found that these people were all injured in their limbs. This made